We got everybody in here yet?
I don't see Nancy. Mike, is Nancy?
I'm here.
One.
Well, seeing how it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the planning board meeting for Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. This meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Telemedia and being conducted remotely. You can join us Zoom. We got some meeting minutes to go over. I looked at them. I did not see any problems. Did anybody else have any problems with the 10:28 meeting minutes?
No, they look fine.
Nothing here.
I'd entertain a motion.
Give you a motion to approve the 28th
So moved.
minutes.
Second, we got first, we got second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody not approving?
Aye.
All right, meeting minutes for 1/13/21.
Give you a
Anybody have any
motion.
problems with them?
Nope, they look good. Motion to
would-
approve the 113.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That was pretty easy. All right, continue public hearing on Springtown meeting. The planning board will be conducting a virtual public meeting pursuant to 40 AS 5 on Wednesday, January 27th at 7. If we did it in January, we're doing it again in February. We're trying to get our stuff together here. The first one is for amending Article XV11 Centertown Village zoning parking. Is there anybody from Center come to speak about this, Colleen? I know I talked to you about it the other day.
The parking?
Yes, the Center Village. Have we reached out to anybody? Has anybody replied at all?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe Mike Rigney's here.
All right. Is Mike Rigney here that he would like to speak about this?
He may not be here yet.
No. All right, we'll try, we'll go to Article XX, what is it, terminology, for establishing new regulations defined in e-commerce, fulfillment center, ghost kitchen, and dark stores. Is there anybody here that wants to talk about this? Any input?
Evan, do you want me to put up your PowerPoint?
That would be great.
Only if the board.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You want to start with the first one, or you want to?
I would go to the second one just so that we can,
Okay.
maybe somebody from Center Village will show up.
Okay. I know they meet tomorrow night. Okay, so the board should be familiar with this. This is primarily high-level information for the public. As the board may recall, we did do direct email notification to all town meeting reps, inviting them to participate in this session of the public hearing. So at a high level, this recommendation is identified in the draft 2020 master plan update. As I mentioned previously, you're well represented on that committee. Both Nan and Mike Raisbeck are members of the master plan update committee. So they certainly could provide more details to this proposal. So essentially, the reason that master plan has identified e-commerce as a worthwhile land use option is that it addresses emerging trends pre-COVID, during COVID, and anticipated to continue post-COVID, related to the rapidly changing consumer and market conditions. Essentially, this zoning article would provide existing businesses and some new businesses additional options related to e-commerce that they currently do not have. So the article specifically defines new uses and then designates zoning districts where permissible via the amending the use table. So the new definitions, first one is we are proposing to revise the existing retail definition. This is specifically to provide further clarity between the difference between traditional retail and what we are proposing as e-commerce. Next defined use is e-commerce. That's essentially internet sales. And for purposes of Chelmsford, we're proposing to define it as business to business, as well as business to consumer. Then we specifically define what a fulfillment center is. It's essentially a last mile bulk product warehousing and direct fulfillment. In Chelmsford, we are creating basically two types of fulfillment centers. One is referred to as a principal use. That is what you would think of a traditional fulfillment center when you hear about Amazon in the news. The principal uses would be standalone, large facilities. For Chelmsford, over 50,000, 100,000, maybe 150,000 square feet is what would be envisioned for principal use. And our second is a co-located facility as an accessory use to an existing retail use, as long as the co-location fulfillment center is under 30% of the total gross square footage of the tenant space. That is likely the biggest option that will be of interest to Chelmsford businesses. And that concept, again, could be something for Drum Hill. Some of the big boxes nationally, as well as in Massachusetts, have already begun to transition existing retail space to fulfillment centers, but it also could apply to many of our smaller businesses around town. The next definition is a dark store. A dark store is essentially a micro fulfillment center. This is defined as a retail use that's not open to the public and no larger than 10,000 square feet. So it's micro in nature. So you can see we have three kind of categories of fulfillment centers. The last e-commerce definition being proposed is a ghost kitchen. This is a commercial kitchen with no dining areas, where the kitchen is being used for made-to-order meals or catered meals. This is something, if you were to Google, particularly during COVID, this trend is accelerating rapidly in Massachusetts. Some of our existing businesses in Chelmsford are likely dabbling with this during COVID, where they've reduced their hours of operation. Maybe they're not open on a Monday or a Tuesday for the dining, but they're open for takeout and delivery. So the second part of this article is to, once we define the uses, to determine where in the town these uses should be permitted or should be prohibited. So that refers to the use table. Which, Colin, if you could just scroll down just a little bit, grab the, yep, thank you. Up, yep, just up the one.
That's a little too far down.
Yep, can you, if you get back up to the, yep, okay. So dark stores and ghost kitchens are in the use table as commercial uses. In Chelmsford, we have a CA neighborhood commercial, CB roadside commercial, CC is shopping center, CD is general commercial, CV is center village, and IA is limited industrial. So several weeks ago at a planning board work session, the board spent some significant time workshopping this, discussing where they thought dark stores and ghost kitchens would be appropriate. So in the CA, those are our kind of villages outside of Vinyl Square and Center Village. I think you have one in South Chelmsford. There's one in East Chelmsford. What is being proposed is dark stores by a special permit from the planning board, ghost kitchens prohibited. Moving on down, CB again is roadside commercial. Those districts are primarily located on Littleton Road, Kingsborough Road, Middlesex Street. As you can see, the planning board has this proposed as special permits for both dark stores and ghost kitchens in the CB zoning district. Moving on to CC, that shopping center, that's located at Drum Hill, as well as Chelmsford Street at Route 3. So, categorized by a bunch of big box retail and national retailers. The planning board has both of these listed as permitted by right, likely triggering site plan approval. Next column is CD, general commercial. General commercial consists of Vinyl Square, the roadways leading into Vinyl Square, parts of Chelmsford Street coming off of 495 into Town Center, portions of Princeton Street, Middlesex Street, and Kingsborough Road. But what the planning board has done here is propose prohibiting dark stores and allowing ghost kitchens by special permit. In the Center Village, they've mirrored what they're proposing for CD, again, prohibiting dark stores in the Center Village, allowing ghost kitchens by special permit. And in the IA Limited Industrial District, primarily located in the Route 129 area, there's also some off of Technology Drive, and there's some off of Watton Street near Vinyl Square. What is proposed is to allow dark stores and ghost kitchens by right, likely triggering site plan approval. The last category here is industrial. The planning board has classified fulfillment centers, principal and accessory, as industrial uses. Reason for that is by definition, these principal and accessory will likely include trailer truck traffic, van traffic, box truck traffic. So the planning board has determined, as you can see, this use is prohibited in the CA, which is our neighborhood commercial. In the CB, principal is prohibited, accessory by special permit. CC, which is a shopping center, prohibited as a principal use, but allowed as an accessory by the planning board. CD, prohibited as a principal use, special permit for accessory. CV, both prohibited, and in the IA, proposed as by right, triggering site plan approval for both. So that's a high-level summary. As I indicated, the planning board did spend significant time workshopping this, discussing what are the characteristics, what are some of the challenges. So again, for example, the planning board discussed that many of our commercial and industrial zoning districts directly abut residential neighborhoods and residential zoning districts. So in many of those cases, the planning board determined that uses warranted more detailed review, and that's why it's proposed as a special permit for those particular zoning districts. So I'll stop there, see if any board members may have anything to add, and then obviously take questions, comments, suggestions from the public.
Evan, the only thing I would comment on is maybe we take and do a breakdown of what CA, CB, CC, CD. Just when it gets in front of town meeting, I'm sure if we can have just a a cheat sheet for what that is, I think it'd be really helpful and probably stop a lot of questions or
It's a
clear
good
up a lot of minds.
It's a good point. You know, if we may be able to also put the zoning map up in the presentation and on the screens.
Yeah.
But I agree. I can do a handout narrative kind of,
Yeah.
text narrative explaining what I just did.
I think that would be, yeah, I think what you said was perfect, but it gets lost in front of people
it's a
unless
lot
they
of
have it in their
information.
hands in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go around to the board members. Does anybody else have any questions? Mike Walsh.
Oh, no questions. We reviewed this in detail last night at the Vinyl Square meeting.
Mike Raisback.
I think Evan covered it very nicely. Thank you.
Nancy.
No questions, but I do have a comment for anybody that's listening. And that is to differentiate between a accessory use fulfillment center and a retail use that has each e-commerce. So basically something like, say, a Walmart that had a major warehouse within their facility and shipped product from that warehouse, as well as having a storefront in the front of it, would be an accessory use fulfillment center. On the other hand, something like a Stop and Shop that has internet sales and fulfills those sales from the existing stocked shelves is simply retail doing e-commerce. And I think it's a differentiation that's worth pointing out.
Glenn.
I think I'm good. I think Evan handled it pretty good.
Is Tim in? I can't see the full screen here. Colleen, if you want to, I got my iPhone working. You can
Tim's
take me
here.
off that. Yes, Tim, you have any questions?
I have no questions. No, I have no questions. I haven't explained it well. Thank you.
Don.
Yeah, no questions or comments.
Hank.
I'm good with it. Thank you.
Colleen, is there anybody in the audience that wants to talk about this?
Somebody named Tarina has a question.
Yep, it's can you hear me or no?
Yep.
Okay, it's Tammy Arena, 3 Burton Lane. My question is, in the use regulation schedule, you have warehouse as listed, and that is planning board in the CB, but the fulfillment center is not. How are you going to differentiate between those? Like, you allow warehouses in the CB now, but you're not allowing fulfillment center. So could they just say it's a warehouse and then build it?
So that's a great question, and the planning board members asked that question during their work session.
Okay.
So you are correct. Warehouse distribution is currently defined, and it's regulated in the use table. And while one could make that argument that we don't even need to do this e-commerce zoning article, what we're trying to differentiate is that existing warehouse distribution in Chelmsford is operated by the retailer, meaning they're not providing traditional e-commerce for many retailers. But to give you an example, a warehouse facility such as, let's say it's Aubuchon or Ace Hardware, they run their own warehouse distribution facilities, and then they truck the product from their warehouse to their retail outlets. While we don't necessarily have any traditional warehouse distribution in Chelmsford, closest thing we have is UPS. And even that's a hybrid of warehouse distribution. But hopefully you can understand the distinction we're trying to make. There are many businesses in town who have nothing to do with warehouse distribution, but they're doing retail. And this would provide them the opportunity to do the traditional e-commerce component of retail operations. Hopefully did that explain it properly?
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious how, if they come before you with essentially a warehouse and they call it a fulfillment center, but they call it a warehouse, that they could do it in the CB. Like that's, I mean, I know what you're saying, but how?
Understood.
Yeah.
So if this article does not pass, someone could make that argument. I don't think it would be a successful argument.
Uh-huh.
If this article passes, then the zoning bylaw makes a clear distinction between what we currently define as warehouse distribution and what we are proposing to define as e-commerce fulfillment centers. So again, by definition, an e-commerce fulfillment center is not one particular retailer. They're hiring a third-party management company to do the warehousing, the distribution, the packing, the retail sales, such as an Amazon fulfillment center at its larger scale. Amazon fulfillment centers under new zoning nationwide is not classified as warehouse distribution. So they've kind of created their own zoning category. And then over the years, it's filtered down into smaller subsets of retailers.
Yeah, I'm all set. I actually had a question too about the dark, what do you guys call them? Dark kitchens? What do you guys call them?
Ghost kitchen.
Ghost kitchen.
Ghost kitchen. I just wanted to know, are you going to make it clear to people that now allows essentially takeout only restaurants in the IA? I don't care. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but I just want to know if it's going to be made clear, because I think sometimes people
No
vote on
dining
things.
area or catered meals.
What?
It says right on it, no dining areas.
No, but takeout.
Yeah, so I understand what you're at. So our definition of ghost kitchen does allow a customer pickup.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have to. But as proposed, and the planning board did discuss this in the work session, I think they thought that was a customer convenience for Chelmsford residents, as well as providing additional flexibility to the operator.
Yeah, I would like it. I know that sometimes things are voted on in town meeting and people don't realize that they're voting to allow that, and then they get mad, you know?
So what I'll do based upon your comment, is I will add on ghost kitchen, I will specifically add in the explanation, includes customer pickup option.
I think it's, I just wanted, because it's not allowed in the IA now, you know? So I just wanted to make sure that people know they're voting for what they're voting for. And that was it. Sorry.
No problem knowing that's what you're here for. Colleen, we have anybody else?
Jerry Lowe would like to say something.
Hi, when does this go before town meeting?
Springtown.
Our meeting is scheduled to open the 4th Monday of April. My understanding is that the town moderator will likely open and continue it to a later date, which would likely be June, is what I'm hearing.
Okay, and you said that you had open sessions with town meeting people, working sessions?
No, at the last planning board meeting, Selectwoman Virginia Timmons recommended or suggested that the planning board do a direct notification inviting town meeting members to this session. That email notification was done, which may explain why there are some town meeting members with us this evening.
Oh, I see. So you haven't really got feedback yet from town meeting people for this.
So this is more than what we've done in the past. And I think it was a good suggestion, because this year we'll probably unlikely be able to do pre-town meeting, which, as you know, many town meeting reps attend. So normally the planning board, at least to my recollection, we haven't done direct notification to town meeting reps. So this is a new wrinkle in the planning board's public hearing process.
I'm just trying to see if this was floated enough for people to come up with pros and cons. You know, I don't know.
This is not going to be the only hearing we have. We'll be having many hearings about this too.
This isn't a
Motion
final
to
vote
unite.
tonight to bring this to town meeting?
We'll be discussing this quite a few times between now and April, and most likely we may be discussed that between now and April, we'll have several meetings on it.
So it's not voted on to freeze it at a certain point and say, this is what we're bringing to town meeting?
We can change things up pretty much up to pretty close to the last meeting, but we don't want to take, and we're trying not to do it on the town meeting floor. We're trying to get input for the public right now.
Right. Okay. Can you redo this slide so that, you said you would, and send that out that describes each district and what's in those districts, maybe a little 3-sentence on each district, what they entail?
Yes, I can do that.
Can someone theoretically have like a small accessory distribution center that's standalone? It's not
Zoning would have to be,
retail?
the zoning would have to be correct. You can't have it if you don't have it in the correct zoning.
No, but if you have it in the zoning that's allowed, where it says accessory and it says PB, is that a standalone place, or does it have to be next to within or part of a retail store?
Correct. The accessory has to be part of a retail operation.
So they can't be standalone little warehouse, smaller warehouses like,
No, it says, the definition says co-located within a building.
Okay, that's what I wasn't quite clear on that. All right, thank you.
Anybody else out there, Colleen?
Yep. I just wanted to say tonight is last night for the language for town meeting warrant books.
Yeah.
I just wanted to note that. Brian Latina is next.
Thank you. Brian Latina, Precinct 4 Town Meeting Rep, 15 Jesse Road. I guess, Evan, why are we doing this? I see you're identifying, for example, the fulfillment centers. Those typically are very large facilities with lots of traffic. I'm very familiar with those warehouses. Is that what you have in mind? You mentioned Amazon, for example. That would create a ton of traffic, big trucks and lots of it.
Yeah, I mentioned Amazon just as a point to the general public trying to envision what we're talking about. But as Brian, as you likely know, it'd be hard pressed. Amazon would be hard pressed to find a site large enough without acquiring many properties, let's say in the Route 129 area, to build what they're building in Littleton. They just got approval on Littleton, was in the Lowell Sun this past week. So what is proposed is to allow freestanding fulfillment centers, such as an Amazon, within the IA zoning district. Do I think that a 1 million square foot facility is going to end up being proposed in Route 129? No, I don't. I think that it's likely that an existing vacant office building could be scraped and a 150,000 square foot fulfillment center as a last mile. And I was explaining this to the planning board in their work session. The last mile basically means that these fulfillment centers are getting smaller and smaller as they get closer and closer to population centers. So, Amazon does have 1 million square feet, and they also are opening 40,000 square foot stores in urban centers. So Chelmsford has a blend. We have a 1 million square foot UPS facility in town. And I think we all understand and are aware of the negative impacts and challenges associated with that. I don't envision something of that scope and scale being able to be proposed in Chelmsford unless multiple properties were for sale.
Okay, and you're talking 100,000 square foot steel tip up or concrete warehousing. Just so you know, those are $15 an hour at most forklift kind of operations. Third parties do save the bigger companies a lot of money, but they're low income, if you will, and most communities like a Chelmsford wouldn't be encouraging that. That's a North Jersey kind of facility. Second question on dark stores. That I guess we're doing that now, ghost kitchen dark stores, in a way because of COVID. Can you expand on that a little bit and tell us, you're talking about very small, no larger than 10,000 square feet, like the one, the facility at Mill Road and 129, I guess, that's probably 10,000 square feet. Is that what you had in mind? Where somebody would build the facility, have a kitchen, and a bunch of cars would be delivering food out of there. Is that accurate for that?
So it could be. Dark stores, I think, of all the e-commerce we're talking about, is probably the most, the one that's as far away for Chelmsford as compared to the other ones. Ghost kitchens, we know that they're around us. We know it's a trend. So this proposal, the primary purpose of this proposal is to acknowledge that our existing restaurants and our locally owned and operated retailers are challenged. They're not just challenged during COVID, but they're going to be challenged post-COVID. So these will provide them options where they can decide how best to continue to operate their business in Chelmsford and hopefully expand their business in Chelmsford. If we choose not to do it, sooner than later, our surrounding communities are going to do these things if they haven't already. So this is to be proactive, give our businesses as many options as we possibly can, while providing reasonable regulation to protect the interests of the town.
Okay, and you're protecting the center districts and our high density areas. You're proposing these projects for areas 129 access to highways, basically. I think from the districts that you're showing here.
It's across the board, Brian. Depending on, so for dark stores, they're allowed in, as proposed, allowed in CA, CB. Ghost kitchens are allowed in CB, CC, CD, CB. Ghost kitchens are allowed basically in every commercial industrial zoning district. So that's townwide.
Okay.
It's the fulfillment centers where the planning board took a more conservative approach, and rightfully so. Just as you said, you don't want large fulfillment centers popping up in unpredictable locations. So what the planning board has proposed for a freestanding traditional principal use fulfillment center, the only place it could be proposed is within an IA zoning district. That's primarily Route 129, but it also includes one of the mills off of Princeton Street, and includes property off of Watton Street and near the Lighthouse School in North Chelmsford, as well as Technology Drive.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Colleen, is there somebody else up there?
No, but Mike Rigney says he's in now if you want to go back to parking when we're done.
Sure. Tracy Cole?
Hi.
Oh, sorry, Stacey, I didn't see you.
That's okay. This is a little confusing to really grasp. Is there a square footage difference between a fulfillment center and a regular warehouse? Like, is there going to be a size difference from what we already offer right now for warehousing to the fulfillment center?
So there's nothing proposed. So fulfillment centers
No, I
In the
mean,
I-
in regulating, in like your classification of a fulfillment center, is there a, like a, I guess an example of what I'm asking is a warehouse would be no more than, I don't know, 5,000 square feet. A fulfillment center would be 5,000 feet or up to 10,000.
I understand. So we regulate maximum square footage on a property by floor area ratio. So in the IA zoning district, mathematically, you can have up to a 0.45 floor area ratio. So, I know zoning's complicated. The best way to describe it is if you had a 5-acre parcel in the IA zoning district, today, you could put up about a 75,000 to 80,000 square foot building, whether that's an office building, a warehouse distribution building, or a fulfillment center, if this article passes.
If it doesn't pass, you could still put a warehouse that size or another building that size.
Right. So each zoning district has a maximum square footage per land area.
Okay, so I'm still a little confused at what the difference is between a warehouse and a fulfillment center. I mean, I know, like, I picture a fulfillment center when you call it that, like an Amazon. Trucks are going to be going in night and day and night, 24/7. And I'm not even just thinking about me here on Turnpike Road. I'm thinking about, like, we have enough trucks going through this town on a regular basis as it is. And you're gonna allow a fulfillment center to be built, which is, I'm thinking, gonna be huge. And I don't know if there's empty space or if there's more than one lot that's for sale. I don't know if something's been proposed or somebody has sneaked in the idea of, well, maybe we need this, but this trucks come through the neighborhoods of Chelmsford on a regular basis. I get trucks coming down Turnpike Road that literally shake my house. And I've also heard people say the same thing about trucks coming down Littleton Road. So I don't understand why we would want to encourage more larger buildings to be built to allow this to happen more often or more frequently. And second question, I guess, is what's the difference? I want to first of all apologize because I came to this meeting a little bit late and it took me a little while to get actually in. So I may have missed this, but what's the difference between the principal use and accessory use?
So the principal use is a facility that's 100% fulfillment center. It's a standalone facility, and that's all they do.
Okay, so that would be like Amazon moved in.
Correct.
Okay.
The accessory is a co-located fulfillment center that's part of an existing retail operation. So imagine Walmart, which has a 70,000 square foot retail floor, and they have obviously they have a warehouse room. Imagine if they started saying, we want to reduce our retail floor and we want to increase or begin e-commerce out of the Drum Hill facility. The co-located accessory would allow that, but it would cap the conversion of existing retail space to no more than 30% of their total tenant square footage.
So Walmart, for accessory use, Walmart could build No,
Upfilled
a
out of their existing facility.
Oh, it has to be out of Walmart facility.
Out of
their
the existing,
facility type of thing.
Okay,
correct.
okay, I get it.
Yeah, so the notion there, it's not really a notion. Their Walmart, Stop and Shop, all of the big boxes are already doing this. Stop and Shop down in Weymouth, I think it was either Weymouth or New Bedford, recently got a zoning permit to convert 40,000 square feet into a fulfillment center. So, Stop and Shop has Peapod, but now they're taking Peapod and they're evolving it into a traditional fulfillment center. So again, if you were to Google it or, ask around, this is the e-commerce and fulfillment center and hybrid fulfillment centers are around us. They're in demand, based upon COVID. Customers, aren't going to the retail stores as often. They want their deliveries, same day, within 2-hour windows. That's what plays into the last mile notion.
Yeah, the Stop and Shop that's down here offers, I think, pickup or something.
Yeah, that's traditional Peapod, where you can place your order online. They'll bag it for you, and then you drive up and pick it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then Peapod, they also have trucks that deliver to your house.
They do.
Or-
They do. You may have missed. Yeah, you may have missed this piece. What Nancy was clarifying is that Peapod still the baggers, the pickers who are picking your order.
Right.
They're picking it from the store aisles. They're not in a back room dedicated to Peapod orders. They're literally
Yeah.
going down. They're literally going down the store aisles and picking, filling your order. So that's not, as we're proposing, that's not e-commerce. E-commerce would be if you placed an order with Peapod and the pickers were in a bulk storage facility with floor to ceiling steel racks, and they were not part of the retail floor.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just as easy to walk up and down the aisle and pick up your stuff. I don't see the difference. But anyway, okay. I think that's it. I got to do some research on this. It's hard to wrap your head around all this e-commerce stuff. But I guess I'm done for now. Colleen, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Are you reachable by phone in the office on a daily basis, or are you working from home?
No, we're in the office.
Okay, because I wanna give you a call later and discuss some things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Colleen?
No, and I'm sorry I missed Tracy, but Mike Rigney is back here for the parking discussion.
Sure, we'll go back to Center Village of the parking. Mike, ring me there.
He was.
You lost him, Colleen?
No, here I am.
So our question to you, I know you're gonna be having a meeting tomorrow, is how do you guys feel about this? We're gonna have it in front of town meeting. Are you guys gonna be supporting it, against it?
That's a good question. We really haven't discussed the proposed amendment as a committee. I mean, I think the obvious point is that there's some concern about losing the parking behind Santander, which is, I think, really the basis of the by right reduction of 50%.
We tried talking about this a while ago.
So I'll just a couple of other points. and I think Brian Millisey is also on the call, and he may also have some things to say. The Center Village, or the Center Village District and the VC Overlay District are not entirely contiguous. The VC Overlay District is a little bit larger, runs up Chelmsford Street, and you might think of that district as including the public parking behind the town offices, which would be the other major source of public parking in the center. I will say that the committee has talked about this kind of generally, and one of the things that we have not really resolved is the question of how far are people willing to walk.
Well, I mean, what this is supposed to be handling is somebody's coming in, putting a new building in, they say, by right, we got a 50% parking reduction.
Right.
And by right, they kind of have it. We're trying to take and reduce it, so they got 20%. If they can give us a good argument, yeah, maybe we'd go to the 50%, but that's what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Brian talk about this, or I'd encourage Brian to say something about this as well, because there has been some kind of under the table discussion or input from small businesses in the center who are worried about what happens if all of that parking goes away, but nobody's actually submitted a letter to us. Nobody's actually come to a meeting to say it. I think the other thing that underlies the idea of justifying that reduction is the idea that different businesses are going to use that parking at different times. If you can set up a situation where you have a kind of a sunlight business and then a nighttime business, you might make the case that they could reasonably share the parking.
Yeah.
I think
that's why we have a sliding scale of a 20 to 50%.
Right.
But right now we don't.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to speak for the committee without having had a chance to discuss it.
I understand.
We will make sure that it gets discussed tomorrow night, and we'll consider putting something together for town meeting. As a committee, we've been reluctant to take sides in various proposals in the center, but I think this is not about giving an advantage to one business or another. This is about how all of the businesses coexist, and I think it's more likely that the committee is willing to give some input on this.
All right, thank you. Is Brian Millisey there? Does he want to say anything, or does he want to hide?
He's here.
Oh, I'm here. I'm hiding pretty well. How you guys doing?
How you doing, Brian?
Not bad, you?
Good.
No, I mean, I agree with Mike. We've been talking about it forever. The big concern is when the parking behind Santana finally does go away. Everybody perceives as a problem, but there isn't a problem until there is one. That being said, and I cannot speak for the committee, if you guys as a planning board have had issues with the 50% by right, I think it's a great idea to make the 50% by special permit. You can look at it on a case-by-case basis. You already can't reduce it for residential uses. So it's really looking at the retail, the restaurants and whatnot. So, again, personally, I'm all for that. As a committee, I guess we're going to be talking about it tomorrow.
All right, sounds great.
Joanne,
all right.
Joanne
Oh, we got one more article to take and talk about here. I know.
Sorry, Henry.
Oh.
Joanne Stanway would like to say something.
Oh, Joanne.
Joanne Stanway, 6 Lantern Lane. So in addition to concerns that businesses in that area have for the lack of parking if the building goes up, because as I understand it, it's currently leased as municipal parking, is what happens to handicapped parking. Because right now there really isn't any at all, with the exception of 2 public handicap parking spots that are way down behind Brick House across from Gristmill. And someone just mentioned
this would be for new construction coming in, adding onto the plans, which we do have to do handicap parking for at that time. That is the whole project. What this
But
is
isn't that
that
handicap
somebody
parking
came
just
with
for the residents of that building?
the residents of that building. It depends on whether it's a commercial building, whether people will be showing up for that. This would be all about new plans. It has nothing to do with what's existing right now. This is to regulate future development, which at that point, we can do something about the handicap at that point, which we're supposed to be doing. But
Okay.
this has nothing to do with what's on the ground today. This has to do with what's coming forward in the future.
Then all I ask is that, that certainly be considered, looking at the lack of handicap parking in the center of town as this construction's being considered, to make sure that that's remedied, because there isn't any.
I understand it's hard when you've got old buildings and old construction. But yeah, this is all about new. It has nothing to do with what's there now, unfortunately.
No, and that's what I want to ask, is consideration for the new, that be part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank
Is
you.
there anybody else out there, Colleen?
Nope, you're good to go.
All right. All right, so moving on to our last thing, which is the marijuana. I know Sukata was there, and she's actually engineered a couple of these facilities and could talk about some of the stuff. Are you still there, Sue?
Henry, do you want me to
Sure, go ahead. You can give it the
set the table for
Sure.
Sue? Okay. So again, a high level summary for the public who's joining us. So this article, to set the stage, so the current zoning bylaw already allows medical treatment facilities, and simultaneously town meeting at the time, with the recommendation of the planning board, prohibited all non-medical uses, including retail sales. So that's the current situation. What is being proposed for this town meeting is to continue the prohibition on retail sales. The planning board's already discussed that, already workshopped that. They're not proposing to allow retail sales. What the article is proposing is to permit the accessory or supportive uses to the retail industry as defined by the Cannabis Control Commission at the state level. There are 7 accessory or supportive uses that are defined by the state and that are being proposed to be defined and then to be inserted in the use table. The first one's cultivator. The state defines that as both indoor and outdoor cultivation. They further define a canopy, and a canopy is not what we would traditionally think of as a shelter, but they refer to a canopy as the total area that can be cultivated. There's a cooperative, which can cultivate, obtain, manufacture, process, package, brand, and transfer. Next one is a manufacturer. They can process and package. A micro business can do cultivation or manufacturing, or both. The next one is a testing facility. They test, they certify, and do certification testing for quality and the percent of TCB. Transporter is allowed to do storage, sale, and distribution directly to retailers. For our purpose, those retailers would not be in Chelmsford. They would be outside of Chelmsford. And the final use that's proposed is a research facility. They're allowed to cultivate, purchase, and acquire for purposes of research. So those definitions are a little bit further defined in more detail in the actual text of the zoning article. And the second part of this article is similar to the e-commerce, to establish where, within what zoning districts, these uses should be allowed. This exercise was a bit more straightforward for the planning board. Wherever it is allowed, it's only allowed by special permit, and it's only allowed in the CB, roadside commercial zoning district, as well as the CD, general commercial district. and then by right in the IA Limited Industrial Zoning District. So I did mention that these uses are required to have a license from the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. That's more of a negotiation. That's where you read about the negotiated revenue opportunities. Then the state Cannabis Control Commission has their licensing approval. And then the planning board at the local level would have its special permit regulatory process. So it's a highly regulated, multiple regulators are involved to oversee and ensure that, locally and at the state level, it's being operated in accordance with applicable laws. That's all I have.
All right. So Sue,
Sure.
so I know you've helped build a couple of these, and I asked you to give us a slight spiel on some of the stuff so people have a rough idea of what we're getting involved in.
Sure. So my name is Sue Carter. I'm a Precinct 5 town meeting rep, former planning board member, but I'm also a professional engineer, and I own my own civil engineering company. So about 5 years ago, we were asked to work on a cultivation site for medicinal marijuana in the town of Littleton, Mass. And just wanted to relate to the board and to the public a little bit of the research that we found out as we were getting ready for that permit. I went to a facility in Rochester, New Hampshire, and I couldn't find it. I was standing outside, not knowing where I was going, and the only thing that I could notice was I thought somebody's dog got sprayed by a skunk. It turns out I was outside the door. So I know security is always a big concern on these. And when I went to that facility, which is typical of what Massachusetts has, highly secure facility, we had to be buzzed in, we had to sign in to a central lobby area. You needed key codes or pass cards to go into a locker room where all employees were required to change out of street clothes into company supplied uniforms so they could make sure that no one was sneaking marijuana out with them when they went home. Biometrics, getting in to the more secure areas. The facility I saw was cultivation, and it also had processing. So the cultivated rooms were all computer controlled for climate control, regulated the fertilizer, everything. When you walked into a room, if the plants were in a sleep mode, green lights went on so it didn't disrupt them. But everything, you had to have a code to get into the room. When they do the processing and picking, after the plants are dried, it's sort of like a bank where there's people who are processing the flower buds are sitting there on a glass tabletop with camera slot looking down on them to make sure that no one tries to steal anything. They had a kitchen that was a food grade kitchen. They were able to extract the different cannabinoids out of the different plants to make the different edibles, whether it was chocolate or brownies or any number of edibles or tinctures. I think the thing that really surprised me is that these people really know their product. They have really tight controls on it. They're very conscious. A lot of the materials that they work with are very expensive. In the case of some of the places, they use benzene to extract the cannabinoid oils out of the plant material. But they really know their stuff. When I was in Rochester, I asked the grower what his best story about working with the marijuana was. And he said his best thing was a little boy from Maine who had over 200 seizures a day. And at that point, they had him down to 7 seizures a day, and he could actually go to school for the first time in his life. So these people really knew what they were doing. The facility that I permitted in Littleton was initially permitted. This is Littleton, Mass. Was initially permitted as a cultivation facility for medicinal marijuana. Later, they went back and modified it so it included recreational marijuana. That was about in 2017 when they first started. They're now looking for expansion. They have the amount of investment that these people put into the building is just incredible. This site in Littleton, each grow room has its own separate air handlers. They recycle all their water. They have I wrote it down, a 1,500 kilowatt generator for the site, which is about the size of a tractor trailer. Around the outside of the building, they have all sorts of cameras and everything. Typically what you see is there's a general overview of security that's given to a planning board, but most of the security plan is done specifically between their security person and the police chief so that it's not part of the public record. But the planning board will get a general overview of what's going on. I did a little research today and I found that that facility in Littleton in 2017, before they went in and started renovations, was assessed for about $1.7 million. And their 2021 value, which 4 years later, is at $3.2 million. So it's a good revenue source for the town. It uses up vacant space. In this case, it happened to be a vacant building that they were having a hard time filling. And it's a good use for some of the white elephant sites. My office has also done some dispensaries, which I know we're not allowing, but a lot of the production facilities where they manufacture it and process it. One of the other security things I meant to mention is they usually have a sally port. A sally port is very similar to what a police station has. It's a secured garage so that if they're sending a vehicle out for delivery, they have an unmarked van or SUV. It drives into this garage. It's loaded in a secured garage area. And then the doors to the facility are closed and then they open the garage door and this vehicle exits. So I know that's typically one of the big concerns is security. The one thing that you do find is that there is a strong odor. So speaking from a townsperson and a town meeting rep, the one thing we really want to be careful is to make sure that they have adequate carbon filters and other filtration systems to control the odor. I have to say there are places where I can walk by and I can tell you exactly from looking at the air handlers and the smell, I know exactly where things are located in any other town. So that would be a concern. But I'm strongly in favor of Chelmsford allowing this. I think it's a good use for some of our vacant buildings. I think it is a good revenue stream for the town. And I think that it benefits society just in the fact that there are so many things that they're learning about this the marijuana. Medicinally, I think a lot of us, as we get older, are using CBD oil on our tired hands at the end of a day of gardening. And I just wanted to let you know, I'm strongly in support of it. I think it's a good fit for Chelmsford, particularly with some of our vacant buildings.
All right. Does any of the planning board members have any questions for Sue? Mike Raisbeck.
No, I have no particular questions. It all sounds pretty good to me.
Mike Walsh.
I have no particular questions for Sue. I do have a couple of questions for Evan. Do you want me to address those now?
Sure.
So Evan, just wanted to clarify your use table. For the board, back in the working session, it was my impression that the Vinyl Square area would be treated the same as the center village. And on the use table, that has changed, where the Vinyl Square CD comes through the special permit and it's not allowed in Center Village. So I think I would like the board to consider that. Vinyl Square committee last night unanimously made a motion that they'd like to be treated as the same as Center Village. My understanding is that the CD district is also down in the center of town. That's where Evan was mentioning last night. Well, if that's the case, then I think we need to clarify the two different areas. And the Vinyl Square area, they're not looking for this to be changing North Chelmsford into this and attracting these businesses to that area. And The IA, I also made a recommendation last night that I would be bringing this forward tonight to the planning board, that I believe the IA should not be by right. It should be by special permit for the planning board so they can have full control over where it goes in. There are many IA districts in town that are right up against residential areas. And as Sue Carter just mentioned, there is an odor that could come from some of these facilities. So I think the planning board can reconsider this use table and before we vote to send this to town meeting. That's all I have, Henry. Thank you.
All right, that's fine. I think we can address those, but I'd like to get to the public too that have just been waiting for us. Nan.
Yeah, no questions for Sue. My comment would be that I knew that that all of these facilities were tightly controlled by the state in terms of security and what goes in and out and such. But I had no idea that it was that tightly controlled.
Okay, Tim.
I just agree with Mike about the North Chelmsford. I thought when we talked about this, that's how it was going to be treated as the center.
Yeah,
that's all I have.
We'll take care of that before it goes much further. We'll try to get the public input taken care of.
Yeah.
Donald.
Thank you.
I'm good, Henry. Thanks.
All right, Colleen. Is there anybody else out in the public that want to chime in?
Yes, there is. Tammy Arena.
Sure.
Tammy Arena, 3 Burton Lane again. Kind of like what Mike and other people were saying. What is different about the marijuana research, manufacturing, and transporting that it's allowed, that you're allowing that in the CD, but you don't allow any other research, manufacturing in the CD district if it's not marijuana?
Yeah, we're gonna take that up and take care of that.
Okay, that was my concern because you don't allow. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else, Colleen?
That's Glenn Thorin would like to speak.
Sure. Glenn?
I can't believe it. He's out of words.
Yeah, it's just, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Glenn.
Okay, I just couldn't get it off mute. That was kind of painful. So Glenn Thorin, 18 Pinewood Road, Precinct 5. Sue, that was a very good description you gave. The thing that I didn't quite pick up on, whether it's the Rochester facility or any facility that may end up in Chelmsford, is what did the building look like? I mean, are we talking 100,000 square feet like a super Walmart, or would it be like any industrial building that's located in town? So I'm trying to picture where these sites could end up in existing facilities. I mean, you think of the building next to Princeton Station, that place has been condemned. Maybe you tear that down, something can be built there, but I don't have a good feeling for the description of the location that could end up in this particular area.
May I answer that?
Sure.
So the facility both in Rochester, New Hampshire and in Littleton were existing vacant warehouse and manufacturing buildings. It really didn't look any different than any other building in that industrial area. The only thing that was different is that there were air handlers on the outside of the building. So normally you'll see very small ground mounted HVAC systems. And on a marijuana facility, you'll see more of them. They'll be larger. And if you know what to look for, you'll see a much larger generator. I know in Littleton, we had to do an analysis of how many decibels that generator would be at if it were running compared to local residential abutters. So we had to address the sound from the generators. But in terms of the building, they want it to look as innocuous as possible and to not call attention to it, because that's part of this whole security thing. Neither of these sites had any signs, so you had no idea where you were. There was a street address, that was it. So the intent is for it to blend in with every other building around it, so it's not calling attention to it and creating a security issue.
Yes, and the thing that troubled me the most about what you had been talking about is the possibility of having noxious odors, because I live down near the asphalt plant. You're in precinct 5, so you know where the asphalt plant is on 110. And when the wind's blowing in the wrong direction, and whatever they use to take the asphalt odor out of the emissions isn't working too well, it smells like you're standing behind an asphalt truck. And that can be kind of annoying. So if there's a similar odor issue, how would we handle that?
Most likely we'd have to work with the applicant, with the air handlers, and they do have better, technology's improving all the time as far as for filtering and everything else. But that's why it's a planning board decision that would have to take and see each individual site would have to go through the hearing process and find out whether it's too close to residential, where it is, what's going on with it.
So
Basically, that's
my
what
only
we have
last
to deal with.
comment, my only last comment, Henry, is in the towns that Sue may have visited that are around here that have these facilities, is there any way to talk to the town government to see if, noxious odor complaints have been part of their experience? If they haven't, we have nothing to worry about, but if they have, then I'd get worried.
Yeah, we could contact Littleton.
Glenn, I know in that Rochester, New Hampshire one, I couldn't find it and I didn't notice the smell that time. Littleton, there have been times they've had odor problems and they've changed what they have for odor control. And as Henry mentioned, it's an evolving industry, and because of that, it's got to evolve or it's not going to be able to keep spinning the way it has been. So I have not been to the Littleton facility recently, and I don't know if they've increased or changed what they've had for odor control. I know initially it was a series of carbon filters and several others, but I think that's something that should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. And I think it's great that things are by special permits, so the town has the ability to ask those tough questions.
All right, Colleen, is there anybody else out there?
Bill Gillette.
Hey, thanks all. Bill Gillette, Precinct 2 Town Meeting Rep, and also a member of the Vinyl Square Master Plan. So I just wanted to support Mike's comments. As a committee, we met last night, understand the benefits to the town and all that, but just as it relates to Vinyl Square itself, would like the same considerations from a North Village and Center Village standpoint, just given the density and all the residential around it. Just wanted to support Mike's comment.
Okay. Anybody else, Colleen?
That's all I can see.
All right. Well.
Yep, Tracy Cole's back. I'm sorry.
All right.
I just had a real quick question. I wanted to make sure I'm reading this right. We're gonna allow laboratories and transporters and research and stuff like that, but we're not going to allow a retail store?
That's correct as of right now.
Okay. I would think that we would want to do it the other way around. We want to encourage more retail in the town, don't we? Or is the town swaying towards a more industrial feel?
I think we were taken in going by what the chief of police said the last town meeting when we brought it up. It was felt that the town really didn't want to deal with the security and everything else that goes with the retail at this time.
But don't you have security and stuff when you go?
You do. It's totally different. If you were at the thing for the retail before, the chief got up and gave us a speech a half an hour long why it brings in, it's a cash business and people easy prey, and there was a whole bunch of other things that were brought up at that time. And we just did not feel like we wanted to open that up this time.
Okay. You can't, all right, you can't go into a retail store and you have to pay cash? To
For
buy,
marijuana, yes, you have to pay cash in the state of Massachusetts.
oh, I didn't realize that. And that goes for everything, right? The edibles, the CBD oil, it all has to be
Everything,
cash?
and we're not talking about selling any of that in town right now, but that's, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Looks like she was the last one.
All right, well, we still got a lot to cover here tonight. So, I think we can probably put a fork in this and move on for the evening if everybody else agrees.
Just to clarify, if I heard the board correctly, primarily with Mike Walsh's input, where we are in the CD, where it's currently listed as planning board special permit, we are revising that to be prohibited. And in the IA, Mike Walsh suggested making by right to special permit.
Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, yeah, that's the correct. But Evan, you mentioned there was another area in town that you could see in the CD that it affects other areas in town. So I don't know how granular you want to get between the two areas, but I just think that we can't just paint one big brush across the town and approve it or not approve it. So if there's adjustments that need to be made, I mean, I'm sure the board will be open to recommendations.
Yeah, so the adjustments, trying to treat one CD differently than another for this exercise is not possible. I would say within the grand scheme of things, if accessory marijuana uses are prohibited in the CD, in addition to Vinyl Square, you have your CD along Chelmsford Street coming in from 495 into Center Village. So in the big scheme of things, it's not a deal breaker. There's plenty of other areas in town that we are proposing to zone CB as well as IA, where these types of businesses could choose from. So I think it's more than appropriate for the planning board to revise the use table accordingly so that Vinyl Square is treated the same as Center Village for purposes of these accessory uses.
Do you need a motion for that, Evan, for Mike's comments?
If the board wants to, absolutely.
Do I have a motion?
So Mike,
I'll give you a motion.
I'll second.
Could we discuss it first?
Sure. Go for it, Nan. You got the floor.
Thank you. So I'm not opposed to dropping the CD and taking IA to planning board, but I am concerned that if there is no areas that are by right, then we should have criteria for review for a special permit by the planning board. And I don't think time to include them with this proposal.
Couple ways to handle that. One is that the board could rely on the general special permit approval criteria that's currently in the zoning bylaw. The other option, or in addition to, is that the proposed zoning bylaw adds another section and sentence and says that the planning board may adopt rules and regulations specific to these uses.
Second option sounds good.
It sounds good. It's good for the board. We won't have those details fully developed for town meeting. Town meeting wouldn't be voting on the rules and regulations, but we could probably have a list of specific criteria that the board would be looking at, such as odor, security, things of that nature. Or, like I said, you could rely on your existing general special permit criteria, which, as the board knows, they're fairly generic in nature, but they're broad. They're very broadly defined.
But they may be fine in this case because they basically say that it has to be not noxious to the surrounding area.
Exactly. And as the board knows, we also have an odor bylaw in the zoning. We have a noise bylaw in the zoning.
Oh, would you be happy with that, Nancy?
Yeah, I would be happy with that.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Well,
Now, do we have to make those changes in the copy in order to get the copy to the Board of Selectmen? What's our date there?
Yeah, so what I've heard this evening is you voted those 2 revisions.
Yeah.
The last item that remains, if the board feels as though you've heard enough from the public and there's no further research that the board thinks needs to be done, you could choose to close the public hearing and then vote to forward this for inclusion in the warrant. The select board scheduled to
when's
sign
that
the
drop
warrant.
dead date?
I'd be willing to move that.
When's that drop dead date?
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, Henry, as you mentioned, there's nothing preventing the board from keeping the hearing open and still forwarding these for inclusion. You could also close the hearing, and as you suggested, there's nothing preventing the board from further researching.
I would say we should probably, especially we're not going to have a pre-town meeting, at least here one more night, get some more people to come in. But, you know, if we have to make a change, we have to make a change at that point. Or we can.
So what I'm hearing
why
is,
don't we make the changes so far, forward that to
Yeah.
the selectmen, and then if we have to make additional changes, we'll make
okay,
them.
so you're keeping the hearing open,
That's my motion.
but you're choosing to
Yep.
forward them for inclusion in the warrant.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Do I have
my
a
motion,
second?
and I'm sticking to it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Tim second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. Mike Walsh, I guess you're stepping out of this next one?
Yes, the Route 40, I'm recusing myself because I'm in a butter.
All righty. All right, so Minister Review 236 Groton Road, North Star Realty LLC. Minor modification to the 11 lot subdivision. Applicant requests the subdivision approval on a waiver applicable waivers and subdivision control laws and rules, regulations of the subdivision law land in the town of Chelmsford. So basically, I guess we're looking at putting the sewage out through to another road. Do we have anybody here to speak on this, or?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Katie Enright here with Melissa Robbins on behalf of North Star. See, Colleen is bringing the plan up right now. Colleen, would it be easier for me to share the one sheet?
Yes, it would. Let me
Okay.
give you permission. You should, oh, there you go. You should be good now.
Okay. Okay, if everyone can see the screen, it's up right now. Essentially, the subdivision that the planning board approved a few months ago had the proposed roadway coming in off of Groton Road and had 12 duplex lots on the new subdivision road. When we were here before, we were sending both sewer and water out to Groton Road, and sewer was going to need to be extended quite some distance and upgraded to tie into sewer. Since our approval here a few months ago, North Star Realty has been in contact with Mr. Mike Walsh at 7 Barton Lane. And we have a proposed easement agreement with the Walshes to bring the sewer essentially between our lots 9 and 10 out to Barton Lane, where there is adequate capacity in the sewer line. You can see at the bottom of the page here is the existing sewer manhole on Barton Lane. In exchange for the easement, we've created a non-buildable lot 13, which is just over 19,000 square feet in area, and that will be transferred and combined with the Walsh's property at 7 Barton Lane. So we're here tonight seeking approval of the modification, essentially allowing this additional lot to be subdivided. It was parts of lots 8 through 11 on the previous subdivision approval, excess area that we had on the opposite side of the National Grid easement. The new property line is struck about 10 feet south of the National Grid easement. So the National Grid easement is entirely within the definitive subdivision project still. And we're looking to transfer that piece of property. Seeking a minor modification of the subdivision to basically finalize that paperwork and the surveyed plans necessary to be recorded at the registry. That's all. I believe you have a letter from Mr. Walsh in the file, just kind of corroborating that information.
So Katie, no longer will need any pumps. This will be all gravity.
No, it's still all pumps.
Still all pumps.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions? I'll go around the board. Glenn.
No, I think it's a good thing. It kind of ends the thought of that ever being developed. I think it's a great idea.
Mike Raisback.
I have to agree with Glenn. That kind of caps off all the remaining worries of this development.
Nancy Arroway.
Unique solution that works.
Tim.
I'm all set with it. No questions.
Don.
It's a win-win.
Hank.
I think it's a great idea.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll give you a motion to approve the amendment to the plan.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
All right. So now we're going to open a new hearing for Princeton Street. Bring it up.
We actually opened this hearing already. There was no testimony at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So we're good. We're good to go.
We're good to go. Is there anybody here to talk about this, or?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Attorney Melissa Robbins for the applicant Page and Hand Companies is here this evening. Colleen, do you want to slide through the PDF, or do you want to give me control and I'll slide through it?
What would you prefer?
Oh, you can feel free to slide through it. I always feel like I'm going to mess it up. I want to almost hold the boards up to the computer. So I'm happy to have you do it. Thank you.
Okay. You start talking, I'll pull up the agenda and get it up.
But I put them in order. Colleen, the one I sent you today is in order. So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, as stated, my name is Attorney Melissa Robbins from DeShane and Farrell. I'm here tonight for Page and Hand Companies for the property at 248 Princeton Boulevard. As everybody here knows and loves, as the Glenview Pub and Grill. Also with me this evening is the applicant, Dennis Page and David Trahan, as well as the project engineer, Doug Lees. We're here tonight for a special permit under the Community Enhancement Investment Overlay District bylaw, known as the COID. I know everybody here is familiar with the site, but I'll give you a brief overview while Colleen is pulling that up. The project site is located at actually two corners of the street on Princeton Boulevard. It's located at the corner of Walter Weedy Street and the corner of Harvard Street and Princeton Street. And I'll let Colleen just flip down some. You can just flip to the next slide, Colin. There we go. So that's the existing site, and you can see it's actually at the two corners of Walter Weedy and Harvard Street. The site currently contains an aging commercial structure, and Colin, you can just flip on down, which has approximately 5,680 square feet of restaurant space, a large parking area. It's surrounded by a fence. There's a large dumpster out there as well, and the rest of the site remains vacant. There's multiple entrances onto the site and limited to no landscaping. The proposal calls for, I don't know if that's, sorry about that. I think I'm calling one of these people on the sidebar. This is why I shouldn't be controlled of anything on the computer. The proposal calls for the complete redevelopment of the site, including the demolition of the existing structure, the redevelopment of the parking lot, and under your bylaw, this would be considered a SERP, which is a commercial industrial redevelopment project. In accordance with the bylaw, and this is just an overlay, just so you can see the existing structure and the overlay of the project. In accordance with the regulations, since we are going to the residential use under the COID, that does require a special permit. In addition to that special permit for the residential use, this project will also require a floor area ratio special permit. By special permit, the planning board can allow up to 0.67% of floor area ratio, and we're asking for 0.58%. In September, Colleen, can you flip ahead just like 4 or 5 slides to the, keep going. That one right there. In September, the board may recall that they approved a preliminary determination which allowed for a project layout that looked like this. There was actually 12 units, 2 6-unit buildings, both one along Princeton Street and one along Walter Weedy Street. What we heard at that time, and as part of this project, we were going to build the affordable units. We did have some feedback from the abutters at that time and the board, and they were concerned about the streetscape from Princeton and also concerned about the density and the setback. So what we've decided to do is instead go to a 10-unit project and negotiate with the town to do payment in lieu of building the 2 affordable units. What that's allowed us to do, and Colleen, if you want to go back up now to those 4 slides, I apologize, those 4 were out of order. You can see these from 2 separate angles. What that allows us to do is actually put 2 duplex units, and that one's good, Colleen, along the front of Princeton, which will face the street, and then along Walter Weedy Street, which you can see with the white and red car coming out, that 6-unit building will remain. That would be for a total of 10 units. These units are 2 duplex style units. They're very modest in size. They're about 1,500 square feet of living area. The 2 duplex structures would contain 3 bedroom units, and all of the sixplex would be 2 bedroom units with a loft. As you can see, we're proposing landscaping improvements, including a wall and a fence that will go around the property, increased landscaping, improvements to the sidewalk along the front of the property. I think I know that the boards received letters from the engineering department, which we did receive the end of last week. We haven't had a chance to review and respond to them yet, but I do have Mr. Lees on the line. So what I'd like to do is just allow him to go over the general site layout and drainage and design, just so the board can get a better feeling of it, even though we're not ready to address the engineering concerns tonight, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Fine.
Okay. Doug Lees, I see you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
Can you just flip down to the civil drawings at the end?
Perfect.
Thank you.
So my name's Doug Lees from Land Engineering and Environmental Services, the surveyor and engineer for the project. What we're looking at is the layout plan. So it's like Melissa said, there'll be 10 units, 30 parking spaces. The parking lot is comes in off Walter Weed Street and to service the buildings. There's proposed sidewalks to bring access from the front of the buildings around to the back, where there's garages that drive under. Some of the other features, the retaining walls that you saw in the renderings along the wall, or along the roadway, and creating a new sidewalk along Princeton Street right now. As everybody's probably aware, the pavement just rolls right off of Princeton Street onto the site, and most of the site is paved. One of the big features of the project is about a 47% reduction in impervious on the site by taking out all the extra pavement from the parking. The building areas are very similar. There's a small decrease. The existing building is 5,680 square feet, and the total square footage footprint of the proposed buildings is 5,580. So it's only a difference of 100 square feet. But there's a tremendous reduction in the pavement. The pavement just on site is reduced from 24,650 square feet to 9,050 square feet. And along with that, in the right of way, we're defining the edge of pavement for the roadways and taking out where the parking lot just bleeds off the roads. There's a reduction of another 3,000 square feet of pavement that's going to be taken out of the right of way and be loamed and seeded with the sidewalk. And that's the pavement that's going to be converted to grass, and the sidewalk will be constructed in addition to that. As Melissa was saying, there's a fence proposed to go around the site. It's a 6-foot vinyl fence that goes between the residential units that abut the property and the site. And then when it comes out to Harvard Street, it switches over to a vinyl post and rail fence along the road. And that continues up Princeton Street to where it abuts with the stone walls. So that little grass area there on the bottom right-hand corner of the site will be, we'll get to the landscape plan. It'll be landscaped, then it'll be a fence around it. So it'll be a nice little yard area for the project with little pocket parks and benches and trees and plantings. If you want to go to the next slide, the utilities on site, there's obviously this gas and water and sewer in Walter Weed. We've talked with the water department, and we've got comments back from the town engineer, DPW. They want some changes to the layout, and we'll work with them to come up with a design that works for everybody. The drainage on site right now, the whole site just drains to the existing drainage system in Princeton and Walter Weed. Without any treatment, catch basin down at the intersection that's actually on the property that catch some of the parking, and then there's catch basins in Walter Weed that take most of the brunt of the runoff from the site. So the proposed improvements will be some roof recharge for units 7, 8, 9, and 10 will be collected and recharged off on the side in the grass area that we're providing. There'll be a catch basin provided at the entranceway and a storm scepter to treat the runoff before it's discharged into the existing catch basin. So the calculations show a decrease in the peak rate of runoff for each of the storm events. And there's actually a decrease in the volume. And for the smaller storm events, the volume of runoff going into the closed drainage system is almost half proposed from what it is existing. So by taking out the pavement, we're just reducing the amount of water going into the system naturally. And the way I'm providing some roof recharge where we can to augment make the existing additions even better. Again, we do have some changes to make to the layout of the utilities, the sewer and the water. Meet with the different departments to finalize that. We're proposing some lights along the back lot line. I don't know if we go to the last slide, the landscape slide, kind of shows the landscaping and the grading. Some plantings around the outside of the property, some red maple, lilac, white firs, and some shrubs planted in front of the units. And you can see there's a couple of trees and the park benches in the middle of that grass area in the front with a 6-foot vinyl fence. The site is lower than the properties to the east. It rises up 4 feet or between 4 and 6 feet, I think maybe 8 feet at the back corner to those properties. The parking lot is pulled back 15 feet from the eastern property line and 26 feet from the northern property line. So there's room for grading to soften the slopes and to make it landscapable and mowable, manageable for the long term. I think that's the engineering in a nutshell. It's a pretty simple site for the engineering because we have the water and sewer available right there. And the drainage will be reducing the amount of pavement so dramatically that it's quite an improvement over the existing condition. This has been in front of the Conservation Commission. I believe they closed the hearing, but I don't believe they issued an order yet. So then with that, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, Colleen, just a couple of business things to do with this. I saw we got a letter today from the Board of Health. I'm not going to acknowledge it because it came in late. It's the same as everybody else. They have to have it in ahead of time. We're not going to close this tonight, so it's not a big deal. I'm sure the applicant should be able to get a copy of that and deal with it before we get to our next meeting. All right, a couple of things just for the applicant and for the board. We want a list of waivers. We want them that you put it together a list, explain it, so it's every simple waiver you're looking for. And that would be part of it. The other part of the payment of lieu. I know there's got to be a negotiation that goes back and forth. We want, we're supposed to get testimony for what the benefits to the town is and what your benefits are, what the full payment is, and see what we can come up to for a solution. And as a board, we have to figure, does this fit with the neighborhood? That's something that board members have to wrestle with. I think those are some of the bigger things that we have to get around, and I think we should get around those first and foremost before we get too deep in this so we can get moving along. I know there's going to be quite a bit of public testimony for good or bad or one way or the other. But I'm going to try to we're going to try to get this in sections that we'll try to keep it controlled, 3 or 4 good meetings, and hopefully we can get this done and moved on. Does any of the board members have any questions? I'll run it around. Mike Walsh.
No, I like the project. I didn't have any definite questions. I was over in that area over the weekend, and it would be nice if they didn't have the 6 of them together going up the Walter Reed Street, but there's a massive development right at the end of that street on Middlesex Road that looks just like this, much bigger. Melissa, question for you. What was the height of the building, and was the architect on board today? Was here today? Or
No, we don't have the architect on board tonight, but I can make sure I get you the height of the structures. The architectural plans are in the, including the elevations are in the application, but I didn't put them in the slides for tonight, Mr.
Okay.
Walsh. I'll make sure I supplement that.
No, we had it too. I mean, I saw it in some of the documents, so I just didn't know what the total height was. So
these are in conformance with the, we're actually not seeking any sort of dimensional relief. So I can tell you they're in conformance with the bylaws.
Yeah.
The only relief we're seeking for under the special permits is for the use and for the floor area ratio, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had questions, Henry.
Tim.
I think if everything was up, it would
barely
look
hear
a
you,
little
Tim.
bit better and fitted, but I like stairs. Is there visitor parking on here? Or?
Yes, there is a parking lot behind the building. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, visitor parking. Is there visitor parking? I don't see.
We can go
Yeah,
back.
each
If you go
unit
back a
has,
slide too. If you go back a slide, I think they actually show the spots on it, Colleen. And then Doug, I'm sorry, didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
no, that's fine.
actually-
Each unit has a garage, and then there's 2 parking spaces outside the garage. So it provides for 30 parking spaces on site.
I think it's actually in excess of what's required, but we have found that it's a good amount for units of the size and a layout of the size.
All right.
All right.
Raise back.
I'm in pretty good shape with it so far. Let's see what details emerge, but on its face, I think it looks pretty good.
Dawn.
Yeah, Melissa, will there be private trash collection?
Yes.
Yeah. And then where's the snow going to be put?
Doug, do we show snow? We show snow storage on the civil plans, but he can highlight it for you.
Yeah, the snow storage is actually shown on this plan, but I hatched it in green, so you can't really see it, but it's the dots all around the outside of the parking. There's plenty of area at the end of the parking lot to the north, and then along the eastern side between the parking lot and the fence and the trees of the snow storage in there.
Perfect.
Hank.
I'm good so far. Looks pretty good to me.
Nancy.
Yeah, just a couple questions for Doug. I was looking at the plans and you know, there are 2 stories in the front and 3 stories in the back with the garage underneath, accessible underneath. So that says that the driveway is sloping down into the back. And it's basically looks like it's being dug out in the back to and relocating soil in order to create that level parking area behind the units. So the questions I had was about slope, and that is slope of the driveway coming out onto Walter Weed, and slope of the surrounding green areas along the neighbors in terms of stability, maintainability, mowing capability and such. Maybe Doug could speak to that.
Sure. The driveway is actually pretty close to the grade of the existing site. A little bit of fill brought in the back to slope it towards the front. So it slopes from the back, the north, the back up by unit 1 down towards the entrance where the catch basin is. And then from the buildings along Princeton Boulevard, it slopes back towards the front, towards that one catch basin. Then it's filled up. There's a wall that comes in. You can see coming along the entranceway, and it turns and goes up along Walter Weed Street. And then that's be about a 3 to 3.5 foot retaining wall. And then there'll be a little slope of another 1.5 to 2 feet in the front yards to get up, and then a couple steps to get up into the building. So we didn't want the buildings to be too high from the road. But yeah, you can see the wall along the road there, along Princeton, and then it slopes up from the top of the wall to the site to the front steps, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 steps to get into each unit. So the pitch will all be manageable, mowable, because of the retaining wall to provide the break, and then the walkout in the back, and all the drainage will flow out towards Walter Weed. We didn't want to dig it out in the back and then have it be a low spot, and then all the water could, if something happened to the catch basin, it got clogged, all the water would pond in the parking lot. We wanted to make sure it had positive flow.
That's kind of interesting because that's what they used to do with the very old houses when they built them. They'd basically build the foundation at ground level and dig out a little bit of it and pile it up around the rest of the foundation.
Right. Yeah. It works well.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess it's down to me now. Oh, Hank, it's all set. I guess it's down to me. Do we have any comments from town engineering yet at all?
We did receive the comments, Mr. Chair, from Christina Papadopoulos last week. We just haven't had an opportunity to respond to them yet.
I was just curious how they feel about that isn't much of a Walter Reed Street is not much of a street. It's only 24 feet wide. I was just curious for their comments. So basically, we got a bunch of comments you got to still answer for the town, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I'll supplement the packet with the information regarding the payment in lieu of. I do have to have the required meetings in accordance with the bylaw to make sure that I address all the board's concerns. I just wanted to have the initial meeting first. Just quickly, I can address the waivers because this one's simple because there's only the two. The waivers as to the use and the waivers as to the floor area ratio, but I will just supplement to make it a separate sheet so you can have it for informational purposes only. And I can speak quickly as to the this use into this neighborhood, because I think that it's clear that this is a clear site that should be redeveloped, and redeveloping the site will stop it going into further deterioration for a structure and a use there that's become obsolete in the area. The new use will actually be in conformance with the residential properties that surround this area and will convert it to be compatible with that surrounding residential use. I think it'll actually enhance the residential area by having that gone, and maybe increase not just the property value for the Glenview site, but also increase the property value for the abutters. And as Mr. Lees has pointed out, we have out here right now just a free-for-all into pavement from the Glenview. That's not a technical term, but there's no actually guided entrance into any of the property. You can go on from any portion of Princeton to Walter Weedy. And I understand your point, Mr. Chair, regarding the entrance, and we'll just take one more look at it before the next meeting, but it does give one entrance into the least used street surrounding the property. So it is the safest means of access and egress onto the property.
And have you got the fire department yet on board with this?
Yes, we did meet preliminarily with the safety officer, and they were satisfied. We did do the clean sweep analysis with the fire truck turn analysis, and they were satisfied with all equipment turns. And I'll make sure that the board has a letter for the next meeting.
And if we can have the drawing like we've been requesting too, would be nice.
Absolutely.
All right, well,
I had one question on this thing, Henry.
What? Go ahead.
I had one question on this.
Go ahead.
In the back, I got a call from one of the abutters in the back parking lot where your vinyl fence is going up. There's a difference in elevation of about 5 or 6 feet to their property. And the concern was that their embankment was going to give way and come down onto your fence. And they suggested that to ask if possibly you could put a wall, like a retaining wall in that area, and then put your fence up on top of the retaining wall so it blocks kind of their view right out. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Sure, Mr.
I actually heard that comment through the grapevine, I guess.
Yeah.
And we were looking at it, and there's about 15 feet to the property line, and right now we have it pretty flat, and then leaving the natural slope where it goes up. But we can grade that off to a 3-to-1 and keep the fence up on top and have a nice stable banking back there.
Okay,
and
that
keep
works.
it vegetated and still keep the fence up at the top elevation, up at the higher elevation.
Yeah, I didn't see where your fence was going or none of that. The comment that they made was the fence was going to be right up against the slope and it was going to be like a straight cliff coming down. And
it's on the landscape plan. It's shown right along the lot line, and that's right where it drops off right at the lot line. So it would have been right at the top of the. You can see the fence, the line with the squares right along it, and you can see the slope right there, the grades. But there's plenty of room in there to soften that grade and make it more manageable and more maintenanceable.
Okay.
Is that a word? More easier to maintain.
Yep. I told him I'd bring it up. I brought it up.
Yep. And I know it was a good comment. And when we heard it, we looked at it right away and saw that there was definitely something to be done.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Well, no other comments. I will take in, I think I'll take in, not take any public input on it tonight, but we'll start with the next meeting, having some public input. You've got some more homework to take and do, and they still got another plan to work our way through tonight.
You want a motion to continue?
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All right, well, Mike Walsh, I think this is gonna be up to you now.
Okay, so we got the Stonegate construction, 1 Billerica Road and 44 Central Square. Public hearing is still open. At the last meeting, we closed the public input temporarily to talk with the board, to talk with the applicant. So it is still open. We may elect to open it up after we get some new information here. Hi, Melissa, how are you? You going to present again tonight?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. Go ahead.
For the record, again, my name is Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Deshane and Farrell. I'm here tonight on behalf of Stonegate Construction and Oddfellows Project LLC. Also with me tonight is Katie Enright from Howard Stein Hudson. I'm glad that she is doing the slides and not me. We also have the project proponents with us as well this evening. As the chairs pointed out, the board's been reviewing this project for some time. I did look back at the determination of applicability, and it is from March of 2020. So we've been going through these details for a while. So I won't give a recap, but I do want to be responsive to the board's comments from the last meeting. But before I do that, I do want to just reiterate one fact, and that's one of the main intents of the bylaw, because I think that it keeps getting missed. And really, it's just the last one, and I won't read the whole bylaw, Mr. Chair, but it really isn't to encourage the flexibility and variety in future development while ensuring preservation and compatibility with historic fabric. This project is doing exactly that. We're doing a transformational project with new construction while trying to preserve the compatibility with the historic fabric with the Oddfellows building and the Fisk building. In order to complete this transformational project and fulfill the intent of the VCOD, though, we do need waivers. And I have heard over and over again that the board is concerned not only with the substance of some of the waivers, but really the number of the waivers. And just so the board knows, and I think that everybody sees it on the links for this evening, we did submit a revised list of waivers, which I think really simplifies what we're looking for. And Mr. Chair, I will not go through all of the waivers, but I do want to make one thing clear about the waivers. The VCOD allows for alternative compliance. And really, the reason for this is to allow the flexibility under this bylaw. The bylaw is drafted, does not take into consideration unique aspects of every single site. It gives the board power to grant these waivers instead of giving specific allowances for specific uses. And I'll give you 2 quick examples. This development site has lots of pre-existing nonconformities, things we can't control with buildings that must remain. But we have to ask for waivers from that. Relief is needed, and those are on the list. The other issue is that the project has internal lot lines that allow for a subdivision. The VCOD allows for this, but it does not allow for specific relief. The board must give waivers. And again, this is on the list that the board is given. So yes, there is a lot of them, and most of them are into internal lot lines and to relief for things that already exist that the board really would like to remain to existing historical structures. And I'll speak quickly before I turn over to Katie, versus the internal waivers versus the external waivers. And what are the real important external waivers to this board? I believe they're the ones that are closest to the abutters. And when we look at the building, the new residential building that's the closest to the abutters, I think it's important to note that we meet the setbacks over there. We're not asking for setback relief. We are asking for relief as to the height. And I think the board's been very focused on the height, and we appreciate that. And as you can see in the material that's being presented to you this evening, we have reduced the height of the building. And I'm going to let Katie get into more detail onto that. We have prepared lots of exhibits to go through them. But I want to be clear that the relief that we're asking for the entirety of this project is 9 feet. The waiver now is 9 feet. The grist mill number 1 on the other side of the center is 11 feet higher than this. So I do not think this is a significant request now we're making to the boards. We've listened to the concerns, we've substantially reduced it, and I won't belabor it anymore, Mr. Chair. I'll turn over to Katie so she can go through the visuals for the board.
Great, thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson. As Melissa stated, We worked very hard and very diligently after the last hearing. Certainly removing 25% of the residential project is significant to the property ownership, significant to the project, and the costs that we've incurred since the beginning of the project and the changes to this building. The new building that we've proposed is shown here. It's 4 stories. The first story is the garage with 3 stories of living above. The same building as the gristmill building if you were to look at it from the bike path view shed, except we've incorporated over $100,000 worth of architectural details that were requested by the Historic District Commission to make this building more compatible with the historic Center Village. The gristmill building was in the Center Village Overlay District. It's in the CV district. It's not in the historic district. So we have changed the building to address the historical concerns of the Historic District Commission. This building is a height per zoning of 44 feet. And I believe you have a letter in your file tonight from your building inspector, Sean Shanahan. We wanted to make sure that the board understood definition. I know that there is no definition for flat roof in the zoning bylaw. There is no definition of slope roof in the zoning bylaw. Your building inspector as a zoning enforcement officer is the person who determines whether or not a roof is flat or pitched. We were able to bring this plan to him and have a conversation regarding that. And I believe you have a letter within your file tonight confirming that. So the height of this building per zoning is 44 feet. The total elevation of the building from the garage floor to the top of roof is 48 feet. And then there's a 3-foot screen required on this building because we're within the historic district. That brings us to 51 feet. This is 13 feet shorter than the previous building we brought to you at the last meeting, and that we've been discussing essentially since for the last year. This building is now 24 units. And I'm going to move to, we did get the view sheds upgraded from the architect, Mogul Architects, just to show you how that changed the view sheds. We have this view shed from the Andiamo parking lot. We have this view shed from essentially the aerial view. We have this view shed from just the driveway between the Oddfellows building and the Fisk, if you were to look quickly. And again, from Mr. Rigney's back roof deck. And then again from Billerica Road. I asked the architect to specifically remove any additional greenery that she added to this image in particular, just for this meeting this evening. To move on to the height exhibit, I wanted to adjust the height exhibit. We've been showing you a height exhibit since our very preliminary hearings that we did at the police station. We're utilizing buildings within the Center Village District. These are the buildings that we're comparing to. Our building is location number 1. We have the Fisk House, Oddfellows, the North Center for the Arts. The Gristmill building is off here to the center. And then the old hotel, we call it, in the center of town. These are buildings that exist within the Center Village, which we're drawing inspiration from and looking to heights. This is our height slide. We've adjusted this to show the new building. If you look across to all of those buildings I just showed you, our building is basically the second shortest building on this list at being just above the height of the Oddfellows building. Our roof height is 173.25. This is on a vertical plane across the center of town. The top of the Oddfellows building is 172.5. So we're less than a foot higher with our top of roof than the Oddfellows building. We're almost 20 feet shorter on the vertical plane than the Gristmill building across the street. Chelmsford Center Hotel is about 10 feet taller than this building that we're proposing. The Fisk House building is over the top of the roof screening that we have here. It's taller than our roof screen in the back. And then certainly Chelmsford Center for the Arts is also shown on this. So you can see vertically across those 5 buildings that are all within the Center Village that we're very much consistent with the heights across the village itself. One of the other things I wanted to mention is grade also has a say in this, obviously. The grade of our site is significantly lower than Billerica Road. If we were to place this new multifamily building on Billerica Road at the elevation of Santander at 35 feet height per the zoning, we would be taller than this building that exists within essentially the depression at the back of this site. So the 35-foot height, certainly if we were along that roadway at the same elevation of the Fisk House and the Santander, would be taller than the building we're presenting to you tonight. So I wanted to make that clear. And certainly, as Melissa stated earlier, the Oddfellow, the gristmill building that sits across the street, I permitted that building many years ago. That building started as a 54-unit apartment building, was approved at a 70-unit apartment building, and then was reduced by Mr. Finnegan and Case to a 32-unit condominium building, which sits there today. Comparing the site plan to the site plan you saw before, we're not looking at making any changes. I haven't updated the language on the building itself. The building footprint remains the same. The building is now 4 stories at 24 units. We're not proposing to change any of the benefits associated with this project. We're not proposing to change the PILO associated with this project, nor anything we had offered on the table previously at previous meetings. All of those benefits remain exactly the same. Not only that, this project now sees, because of the additional spaces, because we no longer have those 8 units, we now have an additional 26 spaces on this site. Some of those spaces are inside the garage, 9 of them are inside the garage. So some of the units in the multifamily building would see 2 spaces within their garage rather than 1. So there's 17 additional spaces outside within this parking lot for use by the restaurant, the Fisk House, the Santander, all of the shared uses within this site. So some of the parking concerns, I think, and I hope that the board sees, will also start to kind of feel, will start to go away. We're still looking certainly at offsite parking arrangements if necessary, but we now have 17 additional spaces outside than the previous proposal. And this is our updated parking chart, and certainly any final prepared plans that were submitted to the board would show this breakdown on the cover sheet for you to see. So tonight, that is essentially our presentation. Ben Swenson, are you on the line right now? He wanted to make one statement. Yes. Ben Swenson is the owner of the site, and he would just like to make a statement before we close.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. First, I wanted to say thank you to Katie and Melissa, and I appreciate all the hard work that you and the entire development team has put into this project. I appreciate the board giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Ben Swenson. I represent AmeriCal Management Company. We're a small family-owned company located in Los Angeles, California. Since this is probably one of our last meetings regarding this project, I thought it might be important for the board to hear kind of a short history of this development and kind of how we got to this point. Our company purchased the property back in 2000. At that time, Sovereign Bank was leasing the entire property and responsible for all the maintenance of the property and the buildings. Santander Bank then purchased Sovereign in 2009 and took over those maintenance obligations. I first came out in Chelmsford in May of 2015 because we'd heard from the town the buildings were starting to fall into some disrepair. After many more visits and a lot of studies by professional consulting firms and contractors, we became concerned about the condition of the future of the historic buildings, especially Oddfellows. Since the Fisk House and Oddfellows were both empty and deteriorating, we believed that the best chance to save those buildings was with a transformative redevelopment of the entire site. The challenge that we faced, like many developments, is the bank had the ability through their lease to control that site for many decades. It took about 3 years with assistance from our local consultant and broker, Fred Faust. Thank you very much, Fred. We were able to finalize a new lease with Santander that allowed us to potentially redevelop the site while also signing the bank to a long-term renewal. During this time, we engaged Katie Enright from Howard Stein Hudson, who I think has done a fabulous job with a very, very tough site, to assist with analyzing the site and to see what, if anything, was possible, really. It wasn't an easy task. We came up with some concept plans that might work around the bank's lease, 2 major sewer lines, the wetlands, the floodplain, and hopefully still make economic sense to be able to save these 2 historic buildings. When I met with Paul Cohen and Evan Belansky, they stressed the importance of this property to the town and really the goals of the town. So they asked if we could bring in local developers. They said that would be essential to success of any redevelopment in Chelmsford. I realize we're a California company. There might not be the same level of trust, which I understand. It's okay. So we took this request seriously, and I asked Katie and Fred if they could help me find some local developers who were not just trusted with the town, but also capable of executing a pretty challenging entitlement and redevelopment in the Chelmsford Center. I was thrilled when we found Eric and Jay with Stonegate, who were willing to restore the Fisk House, and they had already brought a nice residential development to the town with the grist mill. I was equally enthusiastic when we found Human and Ali to take on the Oddfellows restoration and to bring in another signature restaurant for the town. I'd been there many times at that point, and I'd been to Fishbones. I'd heard kind of people raved about it, and I was excited that there could be another great restaurant coming to the center. I remember when the entire development team first met with Paul and Evan. Paul looked at me and he said, "Is this really possible?" I mean, this is years later now. He said, "This is really a once in a generation opportunity for this town." And, you know, that felt good knowing that this could really make a difference for this town. You know, since that time, we've had a lot of meetings, starting with the All Boards meeting on October 15th, 2019. That was almost 16 months ago. At each meeting, we really tried to listen to the comments from the town representatives and the residents. As a result, our two development partners have made numerous changes in an effort to really incorporate those recommendations from the various boards, including the revised building design that significantly reduces the height of the new building that they showed you tonight. I hope you'll consider approving this project. We've really worked hard to assemble a local team of people who are both passionate about the town of Chelmsford and share, I believe, the same vision of making the Center Village a walkable, sustainable focal point, which the entire community can be proud of. It's really taken an incredible effort from everyone involved to get to this point. But if, however, after all of our group's effort, the board does decide to deny this project tonight, the likelihood is we will lose one, if not both sets of these local buyers. Further, there is a high probability that the site could remain the way it currently sits for an extended period of time. That being said, we will respect the decision of this board, and we will continue to work cooperatively with the town. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity given to speak.
Well, thank you. Melissa, are you all set? And Katie, anything else?
Mr. Chair, I just didn't know before we get too more deep into the hearing if we could hear about what the opinions are about the building itself and the opinions of the board.
Yes, I'm going to go through. My intention is to go to the board now and talk about the board. Just for clarification, I think Melissa, I think thank you very much for sending us the list of waivers. I think we're addressing 23 waivers, if I'm correct by that. I do want to address them tonight with the board, so that we, there's some of these that are obviously non-conforming, existing non-conforming, so we could fly right through those really quickly. But there are 23 items that we need to address. Just the board needs to get its facts in line regarding one way or the other before we go down the road of a decision. So we'll start with the new look. I'm going to go out to the board. Glenn, what are your thoughts on the revision?
I'm thinking it's still too high. It's way up there, and it's close to the houses behind it. I don't like the height of it. I was hoping it could have got sunk down into the ground a little bit, but that was something that they didn't want to do. The look of the building is fine. I don't think it matches the character of the center of town. It's a big apartment. It's the same building that's out behind on Cushing Street. It doesn't match the hotel in the center. It doesn't match any of the buildings across the street from it. It's I don't know. We just went through the same thing with 9 Acton Road, wanting a tall building there, And it's basically the same thing at this point, I think. That's my thoughts on that, that part of it.
Nancy?
Yeah. Well, you know that in the last meeting, and I think that goes back to the very beginning when we did a finding of applicability. And the finding of applicability, we stated that they needed to address the height because it was just too tall. When we did that finding of applicability, general consensus was it was too big, but you know, the 32 units that they were pursuing, we considered to be the trade-off number based on the equivalency plan that showed 8 units with four apartments each. Well, as I went through the draft of the findings letter, what struck me is that plan was, that equivalency plan was submitted before the DEP finding that said that they can't build along this in the floodplain. So if I go back and look at the equivalency plan and take out 6 of those 8 units that are in floodplain, what we now have is an equivalency plan of 8 units. And we're still looking at a building here that has 24. It's back to the whole issue of this building is too big for the site. Not just too tall, it's too big for the site. The other concern I have about the size of this building is that, you know, we've had discussions about, well, maybe we just need to bite the bullet and accept it in order to get the Oddfellows saved. And as I looked again at the draft of the findings, I realized that one of the things that we haven't seen was anything from architectural engineering, structural engineering, that was an assessment of, can the Oddfellows be saved? Is it still in good enough condition that it can be salvaged? Or should we expect that a year from now, they'll come back and ask to tear it down because it's just not viable? So I still have concerns over the 3 stories, but now I also have concerns over the number of units and the viability of the whole trade-off of building the apartment building in order to save the Oddfellows. So I'd like to see a new concept of equivalency for how many separate units could be built there by right. And I'd like to see an engineering assessment of the viability of renovating the Oddfellows. And I'm sorry if that's too long of an answer.
No, you have the floor, so.
Thanks, Mike.
Anything else?
Nope, I'll give you the floor back.
Oh, no, that's fine. Dawn, what are your thoughts?
So Nancy, actually, it's a pretty good point regarding the Oddfellows building. Can it be saved? Now, when we first did the finding of applicability and we started talking about that the building height might be too tall, we never really gave the developer a specific number. We only want to see 3 stories. We don't want to see 4. We don't want to see 5. I think we're not consistent with the spirit and the intent of the overlay in this situation, in the sense that we did ask the developer the last time to go back to Mr. Swinson and negotiate something that's going to work out, not just for them, but also for the town. And they came back and they said 4 stories. And looking at what is up on our screen at the current moment, the height of this is no larger, and in fact, it's smaller than less high than anything else in the center and around the center. I think it's appropriate. I don't have an issue so much with the height. And further, as far as the parking goes, there hasn't been please correct me, Mike, or anyone else. I don't believe there's been a merchant that's come forward in our hearings yet and said, oh, no, this is a real problem for us. And isn't that really what we're trying to do, is preserve our center? And if there's not a merchant that's come forward and said, no, this is a problem, this parking. No, we need that municipal lot. Maybe we have an argument, but there is no issue with the parking that I'm aware of. Likewise, when it comes to the traffic, they've taken from 32 and went down to 24. So obviously that would just by design means there's going to be less traffic in the center, at least generated from this project. Then you go to the Pilo. And David Hudson from the Housing Authority has approved this project, and they came up with a number. They came up with a number with 32, and now they've cut it back to 24. One would say, well, gee, okay, then cut down your Pilo. But no, they didn't, which now means that they're actually per unit basis. They're paying more per unit on a Pilo than any other project that's come before planning. I don't believe that's an issue regarding for us any further regarding the Pilo. I don't know of any other board being historic. I'm not sure where they are. Evan, maybe you can clarify where historic is. The fire department seems to be okay with it. And likewise, as far as economic development go, isn't this consistent? Doesn't this bring the energy and the vibrancy that we want in our center? Doesn't it help the merchants? Doesn't it help the restaurants? Further, it's going to help the CCA, being the Chelmsford Center for the Arts, once we get through this pandemic and the CCA can open up. You know, it brings a lot of disposable income to our center. This project, yes, there's some downsides, but I see a lot more upside than downside.
Okay. Anything else, Don?
No, but let me ask you a question regarding, I imagine you're going to go through the 23 waivers at some point, Mike, correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of them, just because like the Pilo, what's the number that we agree upon on the board, you know, stuff like that. So that's what I want to do a little bit.
Okay.
If we can.
And then we'll have an opportunity to go back one more time around at some point.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. I'm
Absolutely.
good for now.
All right, thank you. Mike Raisbeck, initial thoughts on this?
Sure. Well, you know, looking at the purpose of the overlay, it is basically, as I understand it, to give the planning board flexibility to come up with solutions, or to work with a proponent to come up with solutions that further the interests of the center village and of the town and of the developer. And I think what's been proposed with the reduction of 1 story pretty much does just that. I look at the Fisk House and the Oddfellows Hall as the most important pieces of this, because they are the streetscape, a substantial part of the streetscape in our center, and getting them properly redeveloped in a way that improves the streetscape and, oh, by the way, adds a commercial element and a housing element, I think is very, very important. And I think the price to pay for that, being that a building as proposed with 24 units, is really quite reasonable. And that is said now that it's down a story. I think there are some small details to work out. The one thing that concerns me the most, and I suspect there's probably a good answer for it, I just don't have it, is that with the possibility of this property being divided up amongst 3 owners, I want us to be sure that if the project gets going, that we have a way to guarantee, to absolutely guarantee the preservation of the two historic buildings. And I don't think that the Fisk House is going anywhere soon, but it sure would be nice to have it properly built out inside so somebody actually wants to have an office in there. And I think the big worry is the Oddfellows building, which is known to have some infrastructural problems. I really want to see something that guarantees that. There are a bunch of ways this could happen, but I would hate to see a situation arise in which the condo gets built and the Fisk House gets upgraded, and then we get right to the end of it and, oh, well, they're all ready and we're going to fill them up, but you can't have the Oddfellows. Proper ordering of the pieces of the project might be right, or some other forms of guarantee, and I would actually leave it to the proponents maybe to suggest something. So that's my biggest concern. Other than that, I am basically in favor of it as it's currently being presented.
Okay. Hank.
Thanks, Mike. Regarding Oddfellows, I don't think that would be a hardship to renovate that. You're gonna have 8 units above it and a restaurant downstairs. I think there's good rental or condo potential money to be made there. So that's just my take on the Oddfellow. I'm looking at the roof design on this project, and in my eyes, it's still a flat roof. I mean, it looks like there's a chopped hip roof, you know, to make the perimeter look nice. And if it's a flat roof, which I think it is, that should be measured to the highest point, disregarding the fencing. I just wanted to throw that out there. I kind of disagree with the building inspector's letter. And the other question I have is, I didn't get a new total gross square footage for once that other floor is lowered. So I gotta get that number from either Katie or Melissa. But my concerns are still the size and scope. It's just a massive building. You know, I went down checking this buildings in the center, and I know they're higher with the elevations. You know, if they're all on the same plane, it'd be a different story. But I went by Summer Place, right around the corner on Summer Street. It's 3 stories, and that's a big building. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this whole size and scope of it. But we'll hit the points when you go through them.
Yeah, we'll go through them. Okay, so that leaves me. So I think right now, I appreciate you guys lowering the building. I still think it's, as I mentioned in the last meeting, that 3 stories is where I would be. The question I had, it would be nice if, Katie, I don't know if I mentioned this before, was now that you lowered the building and you removed 8 spots, 8 apartments, 8 units, excuse me. Is there any way of taking those parking spots out of the garage from the, I want to say the east side, the furthest side near the wetlands, and making that a slab on grade and then lowering the building any lower outside of the floodplain and then leave those parking spots outside? Is there any way of doing that to lower this building any further?
So if I may, Mr. Wall, I can
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
start with that point, kind of go through the rest of the points. So, and I appreciate the opportunity to just kind of correct some things that, you know, I know we're speaking of height, and I know, Glenn, you asked at the last meeting about us lowering it into the ground. And I want to tell you guys, I mean, you guys know I've been working on this site for 6 years. We have a lot more information than you've been provided with, information that typically is not information that the board wants to see, but would be happy to share it and certainly work through some of these issues if the board is willing to, based on the current building. The height of the building, we cannot go into the ground, and that's for a couple of different reasons. One, and Glenn, you mentioned, certainly the water table is high. Could we push the building down into the water table and then remove the water from around the foundation and pump it into the water bodies near us. I suppose if that was the only issue. The other issue is that the floodplain itself, and I've studied this a lot as we worked through the questions with DEP, the floodplain itself along Beaver Brook is not a consistent elevation. The elevation actually goes up from the bottom of the site, or what I'm calling the bottom of the site being the parking lot adjacent to Beaver Brook, to the Oddfellows building. It goes up by 5 feet across the site. So not only are we dealing with floodplain, but the floodplain itself goes higher with the river as the river gets closer to the center of town. So we're trying to make sure that the garage elevation is out of the floodplain, is out of the floodway, and also prevent it from water getting trapped in essentially what would be a bathtub if water ever got within the building. We could have left the building closer to the river based on the DEP letter, but it would have had to have been on piers and entirely open to the air. Entirely open to the air, which we didn't feel met the people who were looking to buy the condos in this building, and also the information and the multitudes of meetings we went through with the Historic District Commission as far as what this building should look like within the center, which is why we rotated it to get it outside of the floodplain. There's also issues with the bearing materials under the soil. We've done extensive geotechnical work out here. We've also done extensive work with LSPs out here. And one of the letters you have within your file tonight is from your environmental engineer with Center Water District, Todd Melanson, who we've been speaking with. But there's multiple LSPs that have been on the site due to a very old contamination associated with the dry cleaners across the brook, which was in front of the Purity Supreme. There's monitoring wells at the corner of our site that you can see on our existing conditions plan. And the Center Water District is concerned, and it also works with the Aquifer Protection District, which is not to try to keep as much material moved as limited as possible. So we don't want to be moving soil around on that site, nor does the Center Water District want us to be moving soil around on that site. So there's a multitude of things, and I'd be happy to put them all in writing as to why we cannot bury this building.
But Katie, can you, I don't mean to interrupt you because I have a couple more questions, but just having a conversation, can you lower this building though? I understand that there's certain groups in town that don't want you to, and the owners probably don't want to expend the money to do that and to retain the water back, but buildings are built all over the area, in this area, that have water around the foundations. So can we here do it or absolutely not?
It's not economically viable to do that.
Okay, so, but it could be done engineering wise.
Anything in the whole world can be done for a cost for engineering.
No, but it could be, even including in the floodplain, it's allowed by DEP to lower the building. We could do it.
Not to lower the building, no. We'd have to, because we have to meet we also have to meet our cut and fill calculations have to be equal. So we can't fill anything within the floodplain. And so we're looking at environmental issues that won't allow it, water table and bearing soils that make it not the responsible thing to do, and also the Aquifer Protection District. All of these things kind of add up into it. We could have moved, so the building itself was 18 inches lower when we had it into the river. That is the number we're playing with. The cut fill analysis, basically every piece of material that we fill on this site, we have to pull out of not only on the site, but within the same foot-to-foot elevation. So there's incredibly detailed calculations that go into our cut fill analysis, which allowed us, or basically got us the approval through the Conservation Commission and DEP. And that basically cut fill analysis, because we're filling a little bit to get the building out of the floodplain, we had to cut that within the parking lot slightly to make sure that those numbers met on a foot-by-foot basis.
Okay.
Regarding the yield plan itself was produced as part of the applicability. We actually never produced one for the grist mill because it wasn't required. It wasn't actually required until you guys saw 9 Acton Road and asked for it. That was the first time a yield plan had been created. We created a yield plan based on the request of the board at the 9 Acton Road project for the site. DEP did review the site and determined that we couldn't build the residential building the way it had been designed within the floodplain and the floodway because we hadn't proposed it to be wide open at the garage level. If you look at the yield plan, it doesn't say specifically, but the first floor of all of those buildings on my yield plan is garage space. Those could be built on piers. If you're looking for a yield plan, certainly if it makes the board feel more confident for me to move those units out of the floodplain altogether and show you a 24 unit plan that doesn't include units within the floodplain, I have plenty of space to do that and would be happy to do that if that would change any of your minds. That's not an issue for me to do or produce. The intent was that those garage spaces would be wide open to the air and therefore would be approvable by the DEP if we were to look to move that project forward. Now, regarding multiple owners, it is fully our intention. Nobody wants to spend the money to do the Oddfellows building in the Fisk House unless they're going to get something back. There's over $1.2 million being put into the Oddfellows just to do the building and not fit out the restaurant. We have Ben Swenson, before even Human and Ali were brought in, had structural engineers, plumbers, electricians, architects, everyone under the sun in that building, and basically wrote a book on what's going on in that building and would be happy to provide, Nancy, if that would change your mind on any of this, would be happy to provide you with a very detailed account of the Oddfellows building and why we think, or why we're proceeding with trying to save it. Same with the Fisk House. The Fisk House is in much better shape than the Oddfellows was, but certainly there's also been people, when Ben came out to check on the conditions of these buildings, he also had people walk through the entire Fisk House to make sure that the Fisk House was stable and what the issues were within the Fisk House moving into the future as far as what needs to be done there. We'd be happy to provide the board with all of this information if that would change anybody's mind. Regarding the roof design, I have to look towards your building inspector. Your building inspector is who I count on to define your zoning bylaw. That is his job. He is the zoning enforcement officer. That is why I went to him after the question came up at the last meeting to ask, we need to have your determination in writing for this board as to how you feel about this, because it is him or her that I look towards for any project in the town of Chelmsford where the bylaw has a question, because that is their job to do so. So there's nothing I can really comment there about the roof design. I hope that you feel that your building inspector has the ability to do so and move forward with that roof design being pitched, and would be happy to provide you, Hank, also with the total new square footage of the building. We have that calculated if that certainly helps. But certainly what we're trying to get at tonight is I'd be happy to answer all of your, any more questions that you have. If there's anything else that we can do, we've worked really hard to bring this building down by a floor. And we're really trying, obviously, this project means a lot to me. I've been working really hard on this for a very long time, and I'd like to certainly hear from the board as far as, if there's anything else that we can answer tonight.
Okay, I think at this point, do we want to, I'm going to ask the board. I think we should start to address these waivers and at least go down them, call them out and say, do we have an issue with them or not? And then maybe, and leave it open, the public meeting open still, so that the applicant could respond to any questions that we have. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, let's do the list.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to the list of waivers that was sent to us. I believe you have it. So the Santander Bank Lot 1, the front parking setback required 30 and it's proposed 26, which is the new exterior. Is that an issue with anyone? Not hearing any? I'll move on. Open space on site. Again, Santana Bank, 5% minimum, 20% maximum. Right now they have 37% exceeds required open space. Too much open space underlined here. So that's not an issue. The Santana Bank roof pitch, existing requires relief. So That's existing. Ground floor transparency, 30% minimum, 90% max. Existing is less than 30%. Does anyone have any issue with that at Santana Bank? Not hearing any, moving forward. Front wall offset minimum length is 20 by 5. The existing is 12 by 5. Any issue with that front wall offset? No issues. Moving over to the Fisk House, Lot 2, side yard setback, 20. It's required as a 20 minimum. The existing is non-conforming at 18. Any issue with that? Front parking setback. Front parking is a 30-foot minimum per the bylaw. It's going to be proposed at 13 feet setback. Does anyone have any issue with the front parking setback of the Fisk House? No issues? Okay. Open space on site, 5%, 20%. They're sitting at 40%. So they reached that. Front wall offset, excuse me, is 20 for 20. It's required by 20 by 5. Right now they have 0. Any issues with that? That's existing non-conforming.
Existing.
Oddfellows long, lot 3. Side yard setback, 10 feet minimum, 28 feet max. They have 48 feet on the interior lot line. They also have 0 feet to the exterior existing lot line. That's existing.
Pre-existing.
Front parking setback, 30 feet minimum. They have 13. They're proposing 13 with the layout. Any issue with the front parking setback from 30 to 13? No. Okay. Building roof pitch is existing. We'll pass that. Front wall offset minimum length 20 by 5. There's 0. You guys good with that? Existing. Lot 4 multifamily. Frontage. It's required a 50 feet minimum frontage. They're proposing 24 feet minimum. Any issue on that?
I'd kind of like to see the frontage to be what it's supposed to be, but it's never going to happen. So.
No, I agree with you. I think the intent of the bylaw is not being met here.
That would kill the project.
I agree, but that's why we're working through this. Anyone else have any comments regarding the frontage? Okay. Max dwelling units, 4 allowed by right. They're asking for 24. That's correct, right? On this here, it says 32, but I changed it to 24. Right? Is that right, Katie? And
correct.
Yes. So maximum units allowed. Is there an issue with the board members on that?
How do we get to 4 by right?
How do we get to 4 by right?
How do we get to 4 by right?
Katie or Melissa, would you like
Could
to
Evan
answer that?
speak to that?
Or Evan?
It's in the table, the VCOD table. So let's assume this project or a project in Center Village overlay proposed 4 units in one building. That would not require a special permit.
Okay, so if I understand, the model that had multiple small buildings wouldn't be an issue because it wouldn't exceed 4 in a building. But in this particular model where you combine them all, technically it does and requires a waiver.
Correct, if you recall.
I have no problem with that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Would they need a waiver as well on the Oddfellow because it's supposed to be 8 units in that building?
I believe there's a provision for conversion of existing space that's treated differently than new construction. If you continue, give me a moment, I'll take a look.
But I think the way that the code is worded, if you do more than a 50% renovation, it is new construction. It has to be brought up to code.
Yeah, but
Evan, it has to do with the mixed use building and the size of the building as to the number of units allowed.
Correct, in a different column in the table.
But Evan, you can look at that if you want.
Yep.
If we'll continue on.
Yeah,
Side
but
yards.
you may want to rethink how that all stated in terms of how many units per building versus how many buildings could be placed on the lot, and therefore how many units.
So Nancy, are you looking for a revised yield plan on that?
I'm looking for a revised yield plan, please.
Okay, just wanted to.
I want it on record to justify the number of units.
Okay. All right, side yard setback. Again, we're on the multifamily lot 4. The side yard setback is a 10-foot minimum. They have 5 feet from the interior lot lines and 13 feet from the exterior lot lines. Any board member have any issues with the side yard setback? No, not hearing any. Moving forward. Build to zone. 15 minimum, 209 yards to central square. Maximum is 25. So the building is 209 feet from central square and 118 feet from Billrica Road. Center Village Overlay District would like it 15 feet minimum, 25 feet max. Any board member have an issue with this part of this plan? No?
No.
Not seeing any, okay. Side yard rear parking setback, 5 feet minimum. We have 1 foot on the interior lot lines. No issue?
It's kind of close.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the interior lot line, so really.
Primary building height. Minimum.
Is it a concern if they split the ownership of the lots?
I mean, there's going to have multiple easements through this all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Because
it's going to be, sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. You'll be able to answer it better than me.
No, we're going to have significant cross easements across the whole site for parking and utilities, because the site, although works as independent buildings and independent owners, needs to utilize the common space together. So there'll be significant cross easements and legal agreements throughout.
Is there the potential that the property could stay under common ownership and the building go into private ownership as effectively condominiums on that property?
Are you asking that? Who are you asking that to, Katie?
And I think it would end up being.
I think I'm asking Katie. Maybe I'm asking Ben.
Might more be Ben. Ben, do you want to answer that?
Can you repeat the question, please, Nancy?
Yeah, is there the potential that the entire property, land-wise, could stay under common ownership and the buildings themselves be sold into private ownership?
Like condominiumize the entire site?
Yeah.
The challenge with that is there's a couple different challenges. Number one, the bank has a lease that is not structured that way, so that would not be possible for the bank. It is, the residential, my understanding, would have a, that type of structure to bring in, a residential condominium building with multiple commercial buildings is very complicated. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is very complicated. When we first sought out to find somebody to do this redevelopment, the goal certainly was to find one group who'd be willing to take on, 2 historic buildings and do something in that back lot that would make obviously some financial sense. We couldn't find it. The ownership groups, the buyers that we that we got, I think we were very happy with. They're local and certainly they both have their kind of expertise, if you will. Ali and Human are they're really in it for the restaurant, and the residential on top is something for some revenue stream, but certainly the goal there is the restaurant. Usually and I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but when people come and develop sites, a lot of times they don't cross over from commercial to residential. Sometimes you'll have residential people, sometimes you'll have commercial people, sometimes you'll have owner users. So unfortunately, we weren't able to find that. So I hope that it's kind of a long answer for you, but.
So what I heard is that the buildings have different types of usages, uncommon to a single. What I'm concerned about is basically the land and the maintenance of the land as a single entity in terms of all of the interconnection of the parking areas and walkways and such.
Right.
Well,
So what?
I can answer that question, Katie.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
We have a number of shopping centers around the country, and this is very common, obviously with larger shopping centers especially. You look at Walmart, Target, Home Depot, they very rarely lease their properties. They almost always buy. So typically they would have what's called a CC&R, as a covenant conditions and restrictions, or some type of REA, reciprocal easement agreement, that would kind of govern that property so that, let's say that Home Depot has their property and then McDonald's comes in and says, well, we want to buy one of the pads. There would be a document that would kind of govern how it's maintained. Sometimes there is a kind of a master company that they would all agree that would maintain and do the parking lot and the snow removal and the landscaping, and everybody would be billed by that company. Some of the big ones are, CBRE and Jones Lang LaSalle. And then they would bill each one of those tenants. But there are some companies big enough, and Santander is one of those companies where they have hundreds and hundreds of locations. They have their own internal kind of property management people. So they've actually worked with, they have Jones Lang LaSalle is the company that actually takes care of all the Santander banks in the Boston metropolitan. So it's possible to do that. It's done every day with multiple ownerships, and you just have to make sure that those documents are in place before you start construction, obviously.
Thank you, Ben.
Nancy, you good on that one?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
But
So
I thought it was worth exploring.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Number 19, primary height of the building. Minimum is 22 feet, 2 stories. Maximum is 3 stories, 35 feet, max. Proposed is 4 stories, 45 feet, defined height as mean average grade to the midpoint of the slope roof. Actual height of the structure is 48 feet to the top of the roof, 51 feet to the top of the screen. Issues with the planning board on this? From hearing from the initial comments, I think there was. Is it continues still be?
Yep, I still got an issue with that.
I still
I'd
have
like
an
to-
issue with that.
Like to get it down to as close to the 35 feet as possible.
Okay. Next item, street facing entrance. It is required by the overlay. This does not have one. Is that an issue?
I kind of a little bit have an issue with that. It's not a big issue, but it's something that I don't particularly don't like. It looks like you're driving. You're not going into the face of a building. You're going into the side of a building.
Anyone else have an issue with this item?
Yeah, I don't care for that either, Mike.
Okay. Parking and loading standards. Applicability, the existing, this is number 21 that I've numbered it. The existing parking standards in the Article 5 shall remain applicable unless otherwise indicated below. So Article 5, 195.21, no off-street parking shall be located within 10 feet of the property line, interior lot lines. J, One, entrance and exit center lines within 150 feet of the other parking areas, entrance or exit of the same street or side. It's an existing non-conforming. Minimum off-street parking requirements, Oddfellows lot only, within the interior lot lines only, not for project, not shared parking agreement to cover cross-property parking. Any issues with that?
No.
No, okay. Getting to the end here, a couple of other things we're gonna take a look at. 195, 127 landscaping, A.2, minimum of 5 feet alongside of any rear yard interior lot lines. So this is regarding the Aquifer Protection District, Article 14, existing non-compliance to be made more conforming. Needs special permit from the planning board due to the impervious coverage more than 15% of the lot of 2,500 square feet, whichever is greater, under section 195, 174 of the Chelmsford zoning bylaw. This project meet all standards for approval under this section, as it is in compliance with the stormwater policy issued by the Department of Environmental Protection dated November 18, 1996, and all standards of section 195, 175 of the Chelmsford zoning bylaw for the permit under this section. This is also a non-conforming and less pervious surface than existing condition, and stormwater requirements have been met where limited stormwater best management practice exists today. Any issue with this? No. So payment in lieu of the PILO, I think the Housing Authority is suggesting a $360,000 payment in lieu of low-income housing.
That's correct.
Is that correct, Melissa? Yes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
360,000. And again, as stated, that was based on the 36-unit building being the similar design and the same similar mitigation as the grist mill. As part of our revised discussion, we've agreed to keep the mitigation at the same, even though we're dropping the unit numbers by 25%. We've agreed to keep the PILO at the same amount. We think that goes to our overall benefit package. And we did have the benefit of having the Housing Advisory Board after that plan has been submitted to the planning board. And I think you have their letter in the packet, so I won't speak for them, but generally they were in agreement with the $360,000 payment that was supported by Mr. Hedison.
So my understanding, that's a recommendation by Mr. Henderson, right? So Evan or one of the board members, what would be the actual payment in lieu of if we asked them to pay it in full? Has anyone done that calculation in their homework?
I thought it was like 850. Is that right?
$750,000.
750.
Is that based off of the 24?
Yes,
And how did you get to that number, Katie? Can you ask me just?
it's 25% of the units, so 6 times $125,000,
Okay.
which is the 2-bedroom for sale unit number applied under the PILO regulations.
So if we asked you to build the low-income housing, we'd have to ask you, you'd be building 6 of them, right? 6 units in this building? And that would go against our 40B count, right, Evan? If we asked them to, if they were building it?
Those 6 units would count.
They would count, okay. So what does the board feel about this payment, if the calculation's correct of, which of the 750, as Katie just suggested, thank you, Katie, of the 360?
So if I can ask Evan a question. Evan, in regards to this particular project, and now at 24, if the account is 125 for a 2-bedroom, and this is at 99, whatever, so isn't this the highest per unit amount that we've been paid for a PILO?
Yeah, it would be. It would be significantly higher than the others.
Okay.
No, that's, I mean, that's good information. I'm not 100% familiar with that, so.
You're right. I mean, so
what is our traditional, Dawn? Do you know? Is it?
Evan, can you give us history?
The only other equivalent project is Grist Mill 1.
And do you know what that was there?
It was 360 based upon a 72 unit rental project. And as Katie mentioned earlier, it went from 54 to 72 and then back down to 32 ownership. But the proposed pilot remained constant throughout.
Okay. So I'm opening up to the board for discussion on the PILO. Glenn?
I'm kind of stuck on that. When we first did the PILO stuff, we were back and forth with the numbers. We spent a lot of time on it. And it seems like pretty much every time the one comes through, you're cutting it down to nothing. So why do we have such a high number in the beginning? And why has every project been chopped down dramatically? It would be my only question.
Well, I'll answer that for the board. It's good information. If you recall, the numbers that are in the bylaw for the PILOs was based upon a methodology, the difference, the delta between a market rate and an affordable rate at the time. So that's where the 125,000 comes in for a two-bedroom ownership unit. When we were drafting this bylaw, David Hedison provided significant technical assistance. And at the time, a two-bedroom townhouse, affordable townhouse, was about 150, 160. So again, it was a general methodology. It wasn't the cost to build an affordable unit. It was the general delta between. The other piece of information that has been mentioned with PILOs, and again, we haven't done too many PILOs. You've done Grist Mill 1, you've done 241 Littleton Road, which paid in full, and you did one at 152 Turnpike, which I think the board, per the zoning bylaw, the board on its own volition suggested reducing that one. But the final point is that when we were developing this bylaw, we also looked at what has David Hedison requested for CPC money to build affordable housing. In other words, what is the town of Chelmsford average per unit when the town was putting its own money towards building affordable housing? And that's what David Hedison, his request averaged $20,000 per unit from CPC funds, taxpayer funds. And then he takes that $20,000 and then does his financial magic with state and federal funding. So those are the several data points that the planning board was using 4 or 5 years ago when we were developing the PILO.
And Evan, just to clarify, when the Housing Advisory Board met yesterday, David was in attendance and he was talking about the fund and how much money, given what was going to be credited from this project, how he could take that $1 million and parlay it into something considerable for another part of the town, like $20 million, something crazy.
Correct. Yeah, and that speaks to, an average, the town puts in, 20,000 per unit, and David does his thing. My final comment, I don't want to belabor the affordability, but the town has distinct and different affordable housing strategies in different parts of town. And the overlays have played a big role in implementing some of the capital A affordable and small A affordable. So if you spend time reading the affordable housing plan and then look closely at the zoning bylaw, it was never intended to be a one size fits all, particularly in the overlays, and more particularly in the center village, where the bylaw that you're working with, the overlay bylaw, makes ask. Nowhere else in town do our zoning bylaws make asks such as the center village.
Uh, it- it- Can I ask a question, Evan, just on the 125 for just clarification? Was that, so that was that developed during, that was developed based off of the average cost of a 2-bedroom? Is that?
Yeah, so you'll see that the pilo, there's a pilo for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and I think there's a pilo for a 3-bedroom. Or may have been 1 and then 2 and over.
And when was that?
So that was the last, that was.
How many years ago was that based at?
I want to say 2015, 2016. It was the COID was approved first, then Center Village, and then inclusionary. So I think it was 2016.
What's the average cost? What's the average cost of one of these units going to be going in now? Do we have any idea about that?
I think the closest comp's probably Gristmill 1.
How much is a 2-bedroom going for a condominium in Center Village now? Would this go for? Just for clarity, because I just want to compare the 125,000 to compare to, is it a 300,000? Is that confidential information that we can't talk about?
I'm not sure exactly what a gristmill unit would go to, but I will also tell you that because the interest rates are so low now, the calculation of an affordable unit's actually gone up as well. So a 2-bedroom unit that used to be go for $165 could easily go for 200,000 now, Mr. Chair. And just quickly to Evan and Mr. Cole's point, in your bylaw for inclusionary zoning, because of this reason, it's always a sliding scale. It does allow for the planning board to review this number on a yearly basis, which has never happened. But I don't think it's actually beneficial for the board to do this as a one-size-fits-all, because as you can see from these projects and the different overlays that kind of uses this inclusionary zoning bylaw, it's always a measurement of what the mitigation package is to what a project can afford and where the project is and what the affordability needs are. So it's turned out to be more of a weighing of the needs and the all over mitigation than just what's the delta between the affordable unit and the market rate unit. It just doesn't function.
No, I know. Yeah, that's probably, it was unfair. It was kind of unfair question. I'm just trying to, I don't want to get into real estate. I'm just trying to understand. Yeah. I wasn't on the board when they set the 125. Right. It seems very, very low. Right. Compared to what these are going to sell for. Right. And I think that in my 2 cents, I think this is the prime example where we would want low income housing in the center of town, where there's bus routes and there's, people, that's where it is. So
Mike, just to clarify now that I understand your question. So the 125 was the delta between an average a two-bedroom ownership. Okay. So back then it was likely 350, 375. So
it's the delta.
It's the delta between a market rate and an affordable.
Okay, thank you. I just I'm sorry it took a few minutes to educate me that on that. Problem. Affordable. All right, I was going down. Glenn, you spoke that on Nancy. Did you have what's your opinion on the pilo?
I think 360 is running way low for this project. Gristmill 1 had a lot of contributions to the town that we compensated for by reducing pilo. I'm not seeing that in this project. I mean, the major contribution I'm seeing is the restoration of the Oddfellows. Mm-hmm. And that's basically a project cost. So, I mean, I would be much happier. I don't necessarily need to see it go to 750, but I'd be a lot happier if it went to 550. I think that David really needs these funds in order to provide housing for the neediest people in our town. And I think that because of the nature of these particular units, that they are high-end condo units, that it's appropriate that they pay their share.
Okay. Dawn?
Yeah.
Can I just respond to Nan's comment very quickly? I
think
sure. We went through the mitigation package 2 meetings ago, and we actually used the same package that they used for Grist Mill 1. We used the same exact line items, and we found out the mitigation package was actually more than the Grist Mill had provided, and that didn't include the historical upgrades to the building. And as a matter of fact, it didn't even include the tax benefits of the commercial properties on the building. So I think that's an unfair statement to make that our mitigation package is less, because we've actually made the point that it is more than what was previously approved by Grist Mill 1. That's all, Mr. Chair.
That's that you're referring to, Melissa, is the money that's being donated for the walkways and we talked about the bridge and all that earlier, right?
That's correct. All the
Yeah.
improvements in the
But the improvements are not going to be done part of this project. You're giving payment in lieu of, right?
No,
Is
no,
that-
I'm talking about the entirety of the mitigation package that also includes the payment in lieu of. It
Okay.
includes the brook walk and the
Right.
walkway and the donation of the land and the upgrades to the fence around the Fisk house and everything else
Yep.
we talked about.
And the bricks and stuff like that was on there too. Yep.
Exactly, and all the other things we're doing for engineering. And then we didn't even include the tax benefits, which Grist Mill 1 didn't even have, of these 2 commercial properties.
Mhm.
That's going to be a net benefit to the town. This will actually be an increased mitigation package. And certainly with the additional money with the payment in lieu of, with the reduction of units, this is going to be well in excess of what Grist Mill 1 provided for mitigation.
Okay. Dawn, it was your turn. Your
Yeah,
floor.
so just for clarification, it's my understanding, and maybe Melissa, you can clarify, the applicant did meet with David regarding the Pilo?
Yes, we did.
You did? All right.
We have a letter that was in that mitigation
Right,
package. Mr.
right.
From a
And
couple of meetings
so
ago.
therefore, I would not second guess David on what he knows about affordable housing. All right, if he sees that $360,000 is an appropriate sum of money that he can use to create affordable housing under one of his programs and get something more, a bigger bang for the buck, I don't think it's up for the planning board to argue against anything that David has to say about affordable housing.
Okay. I mean, it is in the bylaw that it's a recommendation and the final recommendation comes from the planning board.
That's true.
So we got to take it's a recommendation. So he sent us that letter. So.
Yeah, just to clarify, because this is good background information for the newer members. So David reviews the pro forma.
Okay.
So, or he's reviewing what the proponent is sharing as far as some project costs. The planning board, while the planning board could ask for that information, that would assume that the planning board, one, doesn't want to use David as the primary kind of technical advisor. Two, the spirit and intent of the overlay, and the Pilo, the planning board has to date has not asked for the book, so to speak. And I think that's primarily based upon, one, trusting David, relying on David, and two, the provision in the Pilo that talks about the notion of the Pilo should not in and of itself make a project uneconomical. So historically, we've relied entirely on David to do his technical review. I think that the missing piece with this is, and this may be what you're picking up on, is the board hasn't asked David to come in and speak in detail about his methodology in reviewing the Pilo. It's been his letter. And for some board members, that may be sufficient. For others, you may be looking for more explanation. I think the board may have had David come in for Grist Mill 1, and I think there was more engagement. I just can't remember if he personally appeared or not.
Mike Raisbeck, Pilo.
I think a lot of the conversation we're having is a conversation we need to have in a work session as we look forward to future projects.
Yeah.
As to the particular amount, it's halfway up to the maximum anyway. I don't think the difference between that and the absolute dead maximum we could get really should be the determining factor here. I'm certainly willing to go with the PILO as it's currently established. But going forward and on other projects, we need to have this conversation before the projects come in, not afterwards.
Great. Hank?
Yeah, I think it's a little low, but I trust David. He's been doing this for a long time, and I just assume give the developers a little extra dough to concede what we want them to do. So I'm fine with the PILO.
And I'm fine with the 360 as well. And I just learning process. So, one of the last items that I think that were not on the waiver, but we talked about as one of the conditions that going forward would be is how do we tie all three together, all four projects together, all four lots, the improvements and everything. And there was a discussion regarding that. And I don't know what the board's feelings are regarding that if it does go forward, that the Fisk House, the Oddfellows house, full restored, restorated prior to any occupancy of the multifamily building. And I throw that out there to the board to discuss if that's something we want to put on as a decision. I understand the restaurant could follow behind, but the restaurant should follow behind with a date, a number of months. Because if this does get approved, this project goes approved, I mean, that's the caveat. We would like to see the Fisk House done and the Oddfellows done, but I think we got to tie it to the occupancy of the first occupant going into that multifamily so that we guarantee, it's the guarantee, Mike, that you were talking about earlier on, that it would get, that would have to be written in, that it would be a guarantee. Go ahead, Mike.
Let me give you a thought though on that, if I might, Mike, if this is a good moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm perfectly, if we can work something out, and I'm sure there's got to be a way to work this. We've got enough good lawyers here. If we can, the thing that I want to make sure happens is that the buildings are stabilized, their infrastructures are fixed up. You know, the roof is tight, the basement's tight, it doesn't have water flowing down the walls. I'm less concerned about the details of the interior building out, at least in part because in the case of the Oddfellows building, I can say I don't care if they're going to build 8 apartments in there, but you bet whoever does the work after they get the exterior and the infrastructure straightened out is going to get those 8 apartments going as quickly as they can in order to get some income out of them. So I think we should focus on the preserving the exterior and preserving the infrastructure, and maybe the building doesn't actually have to be completed inside for me to be satisfied.
Okay.
That make any sense?
No, total
Okay.
sense. But you would tie it to the preservation of the exterior of the facilities, the buildings. To the
I want to
occupancy
make sure that
of
the buildings
multifamily.
don't fall in the cellars.
Would you agree to the occupancy of the multifamily?
Mr. Chair, if I may just interject there, we have to make sure that we have separate financing for each of these structures, and to tie the Oddfellows into the multifamily structure in that way would not be feasible. I know we talked about this at the beginning, and we had spoke with Mr. Belansky about perhaps how to tie them together. And the suggestion was made that we would run parallel. So when we start construction on the residential building, we'll have 26 months from the time we start that building in order to complete all of the outside work on both the Oddfellows and the Fisks, buildings. If they're not completed by the end of the 26 months, all both the Fisk House and the Oddfellows owners would agree to bond any remaining work to the structure to be completed, so that this board and the town could be sure that we're not getting occupancy permits for that back structure without security for the town that the other two buildings are not going to be done. So that was the security that we had suggested so that we could make sure that everybody could get their own financing for their own projects. Now, just quickly, and I know it's late, as to what's happening on the inside, if they do the outside, they will do the inside, because as Katie stated, the work just to do the historical renovation is going to cost an estimated $1.2 million. And that's of today in pandemic, February 10th, 2020, with construction prices rising by the minute. And you can bet that's going to be even higher by the time we get a shovel in the ground. So I can tell you that if they're going to do the outside, the inside will follow, because they will have to. So that, I think we are going to need to do that type of staggered condition that ties it together, but then gives a bonding deadline so the board can have some security there. And that's generally what the board does with any project, is they say, we're going to let you go forward. If you want an occupancy permit on these structures, they have to be done within a certain amount of time. And if you don't complete it, you bond the remainder of the work. We're just asking for it in a more divided fashion, since we have different property owners out here. And I
think a bonding approach like that is perfectly reasonable. What do you think, Mike? You actually have a little more experience in this space than I do.
No, I think it's fine. I just think that we're approving this project, one project with all three buildings, 4 lots. And that was part of the deal, that we approve all of them at once. So I think they have to be tied together.
Right.
And if that's a bond, and if Evan agrees with that and the town attorney agrees with the bond, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to have the conversation in 4 years from now that we're looking at a multifamily building and nothing else has been done.
Yeah, agreed.
But you'd be comfortable if it was bonded, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if the board, I'll be comfortable with the board. I just wanted to raise it to the board's attention that whatever the board decides, I mean, if the board as a group decides the bonding is the best way to go, that's fine. I just wanted to try to tie it together somehow, because we're approving it as one. That was just my concern.
And we probably should put a time frame on it then.
I mean,
Sounds like they already have one, 24 months.
26 months.
That's the estimated time it will take us to complete all the work.
Is that including the COVID delay of the restaurant too?
It wouldn't matter, because even if they don't build out the inside of the restaurant, the outside of the work would have to be completed. And if it wasn't complete, would have to bond whatever was left. So regardless of the fact if they finish the build out of design or not, the outside would have to be done, to Mr. Raisback's point.
Okay. Any other comments or any other, we went through all the waivers. Are there any other comments from the board that they would like to ask the applicant before we go to the next step?
So I have a concern about the completion and the bond. And I'm concerned about only addressing the outside, because the Oddfellows reportedly has damage on the inside. And I really feel that that needs to be included in that.
You broke up, Nancy.
Because if that doesn't get done, I'm saying if that inside damage does not get taken care of and controlled in terms of the structural damage and the infrastructure, even if you restore the outside of the Oddfellows, it is not a viable building, and they could very well just come back to the Historical Commission and ask to raise it. And the only thing the Historical Commission can do is delay it for a year. And at that point, it's gone.
Melissa, on that point, is the intention for the apartments for the Oddfellows to go in right away, even though the restaurant was not done?
I think that is the plan. And I will tell you, I think the structural shoring is part of the outside historic renovation. Obviously, you wouldn't do the historic renovation without making sure that the property itself is secure. So I can confirm that for you, Mr. Chair.
And the building inspector would not allow the apartments to be on the second floor with full water in the basement.
That's correct. I mean, they would have to be habitable even without the restaurant.
Right. So that's the
Melissa,
concern.
Would you include the apartments with the externals of the Oddfellows?
I just have to see what the breakdown is, Nan. I'm not exactly sure what was provided for in there, if that was going to include the build out of the apartments prior to. So I just have to check what the timing is for that.
But certainly the intention
Yeah,
is,
I have no concerns over the build out of the restaurant.
Yeah.
If the apartments get done.
I gotcha.
Okay, so, so at this point, does the board members feel, I've addressed the ones that we feel like there was some issues with. There was some issue with the frontage of the multifamily lot. There was an issue with the maximum dwellings on the unit. There was issue with the building height and then the street facing entrance. And then we had a major discussion regarding the PILO and the occupancy of the end, which we just finished up. Do you feel, the question is do you want to open it back up to the public? Do you feel you got enough information or and allow the public to speak on this? Or do we want to, how do you want to proceed? Or do we want to close the public hearing and then go into deliberations?
I think we should go into deliberation on it. We'll beat it around enough for it's going on.
If I can differ a
I
little
would
bit.
really like to see an equivalency layout.
Okay, you'd like to see the what?
Yeah, I think we do.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I'm not sure who's talking here. I think given that the other substantial change in the nature of the project with removing that story, I think it's incumbent upon us to at least allow the public one more stab at it.
Okay. And Nancy, you had mentioned you're looking for, again, you broke up.
I really do want to see the equivalency layout submitted as part of the package.
Can I just ask to that point, if we did do the yield plan and it is found to be that 24 units is appropriate there without any bonuses, which I haven't mentioned yet, we're not asking for any bonuses. Does that sway you as to the building design? Or are you just looking to include it as part of the package?
You know, Melissa, in my other life, I'm a quality manager, and I really like to have my I's dotted and my T's crossed. I truly want this package to justify the 24 units. So
before you can make your final decision, though, that's what I'm saying. We're just not preparing the information to know that we're walking into a denial. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, if you come back and it says that you can fit 24 units, there's no question. If you come back and it says you can fit 8, then we could be in a whole different discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
So Melissa, are you saying, Melissa? So the question is, and I'm just, you've heard a number of things here tonight, and I think I'm not putting, but are you concerned that we're going down a road that? Do you want to continue? Or do you want us to close this and then take our vote based off the information that we have?
My question is, Mr. Chair, and I think that I know that it's very late, but if there's information that we can provide to the board that can get an affirmative decision and that we can prove that the waivers that are in question are warranted, of course we want to get the board the information and continue to the discussion. But if we're just continuing a hearing to get the information and the board members that have spoken against these waivers are never going to change their minds, even if this information is given, I think that the board, is in their right mind and position at this point to close the public hearing and make a vote. What I'm hearing from Ms. Arroway, and I won't put words in her mouth, and she can speak for herself, but I think she's not made her final decision yet and is waiting to get all the facts in hand. And if that's the case, then we're happy to provide the information to see if that the waivers could be granted to allow this project to proceed. We've gone too far.
No, I agree. I know.
We've come too far to not give it that opportunity, I think.
Absolutely.
But if it's a non-cause, I wouldn't want to waste the board's time anymore.
No, I agree I understand that. All right, so can I just let's just get a straw poll here. How many in favor of opening the public hearing back up again?
I'm in favor, but are you sure we want to do it tonight?
No, we're not going to do it tonight. If we do it, we're not going to
Yeah,
do it. Tonight.
okay.
It's too late. I'm sorry about that. But
All right.
I'm
the
saying
question-
no on that.
How many, well, I mean, I don't know if we're at a crossroads here. I think there's some major issues that are still here, and one of them is the height of the building. And you need a unanimous vote here. You need 5 out of 6 votes. And so I just don't know. I'm trying to look at Melissa here in the screen here and trying to, on that request that was just there. If this information that Nancy's asking for, and then the public hearing is going to allow us to change some of the board members' minds or address some of their concerns, then we'll continue this. If it's not, I don't know if there's any reason to continue.
My point is that's what I'm trying to seek from the board. Is the information that's being requested tonight so the board can change their conceptions about these waivers, or is there no more information that we can give you? If this information is going to help the board to get around their issues with issuing the special permits and conformance with the, Chelmsford rules and regulations, we're happy to continue the hearing, get the board the information, and come back in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
I'm still hung up on the 3 floors, 3 stories, so all this other information gathering is not going to assist me. The only question I had was when I spoke of the roof, I couldn't really see it in the drawings, but that hip roof, how high is that above the flat roof?
80.
I believe it's 9 feet. What
The hip,
the
The
sloped
hip roof.
portion of the sloped portion of the roof is 9 feet tall.
above the flat roof, I'm asking. It's
Yeah,
9
but-
feet above the
Oh,
flat
above
roof.
no. I don't have that. I have the interior dimension.
All right, for what I'm looking at, and I may be wrong, it looks like that hip roof height of that is equal to the flat roof. So it's right at the same height as the flat roof. That's why I said earlier, it's basically a flat roof with a fancy facade around it. And if that's the case, you gotta go to the total height, not the mean height. That's why I was referring to Sean. But that was the only thing I would ask for, but I'm still hung up on the 3 stories. And I know I said 4, but after looking around and doing my homework, I want to stick with the 3. So I'm just trying to help Melissa not drag everything out.
Can I just ask, is it the number of stories or is it the height of the building?
It's the height of the building, which is the number of stories. 3 stories is plentiful big over there. I mean, that's a when you see that building up close, that's a big building. And I just think it's too big for that area.
And we're sitting
I mean,
at 4 stories.
Right. I'd like to have you guys make money, but there's a balance to be struck here. And, I think 3 is what they intended to in the zoning bylaws and the Center Village overlay. And there was a reason for that. But that's just my 2 cents.
I'm going to go along with Hank on the 3 stories.
Okay. So then on that note, there's 2 there. And I don't know where the rest of you feel. So should we open the public hearing? That's a question. Anyone in favor of opening the public hearing? Just say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
2.
There's been a lot of new information put out here that the public deserves to be able to respond to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Right. I mean, it's, look.
You want a motion to close the public hearing?
Listen for a second, John.
Is there a motion on the table?
Yes.
What is the motion? To close the public
To
hearing?
close the public hearing.
Wait, why would you do that?
Excuse me? It's not a public hearing. Well, the issue is that at the table right here is there's a waiver that they're not changing their mind on.
I think what the public is asking is, why is the board determining that they don't need to be heard? And to answer that, what you're hearing from the board, I'm talking to the public right now, is that the the board believes that it has all the information it needs to make a vote based upon their discussions with the applicant.
I don't think they have enough information from the public. The public has a lot of information they want.
Can you please turn him off? I don't think he's part of the discussion.
Yeah. Sir, this is still,
So
the
just-
public is not part of this conversation right now.
My recommendation to the board as you take this vote is just make it very clear to the public as to why or why not you're taking the vote that you're taking. I think you've done that, but there still seems to be some confusion. The other way to express this, and I don't want to speak for board members, is that it's very likely that board members feel that whatever the public has to say either has already been said, meaning in opposition to, or the board feels as though they as individuals have all the technical information they need to make its vote. But that's essentially the vote that the board is contemplating. What value or additional value will public input provide based upon where the board is via its straw poll, so to speak?
Yeah,
So to go along with my motion, I'll throw that out there for you. The reason for the motion, we have gathered, I think, enough information to be able to make our decision. And we have heard from the public, many of the public, as to their concerns, and they're all leading in the same direction. So I think just continuing to listen to more of the public is just redundant. So I think it's time to just to move on.
So that's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second to close the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor. So we're going to do a roll call. Glenn.
Aye.
Let me go to my list here. Nancy.
No.
Dawn.
Aye.
Mike Raisbeck.
No.
Hank.
Yes.
And I am a yes. So the public hearing is closed. So at that point now, are there any motions on the table, or
We want a motion to
are there
approve the
other items?
project.
One second, Glenn, I just want to make sure there's any questions that amongst the board that we need to discuss going forward. Is there anything that's concerning anybody on the board going forward?
I'm concerned that I'd like to see the yield plan based on the keep out zones from DEP.
So
And you
can
can't do that with the public meeting closed.
Okay.
So can we continue the hearing until next meeting so Melissa and or whomever can get this information?
I don't know if they can actually give it to you because we just closed it.
Public.
Right.
I think, could we close it?
We close the public hearing, public input.
No, we closed the public hearing.
Close the public hearing. We
No,
did
we
this at the
closed
last
public
meeting.
input
Yeah.
last
Let's
time.
change it again.
Any motion?
I'll give you a motion to approve the project and all the special permits to go with it.
I want to make one comment regarding this height, because this is something that seems to be significant. And what kind of convinced me that 4 stories is probably the right number is I had watched Chasing the Facts, and one of the abutters, the significant abutter to this project, quote, said, "My wife and I said to the developer, if he reduced it to 4, we would probably go away." It's still big enough to see from the backyard, but it does not tower over the trees and does not tower over the other buildings. At that point, the developer refused because it wasn't economically feasible. We, as a board, asked the developer to go back and speak with Mr. Swenson and try to negotiate something that could make sense. They did that, and they came back at 4 stories. Now, according to that butter, 4 stories is the right number. So if 4 stories is the right number for the abutter, it's the right number for us, in my opinion.
Well,
But
it's
we're
not just the
being permitted
abutters
to hear
using
that From
that.
the abutter.
Sorry?
I said, we're not being permitted to hear that from the abutter.
You don't need to. It was on Chasing the Facts. It's public knowledge. 1508 on the
Sorry,
time
but
frame.
I didn't see it.
This project, Dawn, doesn't affect just the abutters, it affects the whole center of town, everybody who utilizes it.
Who have we heard from the center, though? How does it affect the merchants? So we have a lot of merchants in the center, but yet we haven't heard from the merchants to say, oh, no, parking is an issue.
They had ample time.
Exactly right. We've had John Harrington come out and say, no, this project is good. And he actually is an owner in the center.
Right.
So there's a motion on the table to accept, what was it, Glenn? To accept all of this project with all of the waivers. Is there a-
Second that.
Dawn will second it. Okay, so we're gonna do a roll call. This is a 5 to, they're gonna need 5 out of 6 votes. Glenn,
No.
Nancy,
No,
Dawn,
Yes.
Mike Raisbeck,
Yes, and I'm very disappointed that we didn't continue public input. I think they had a right to it.
Hank,
No.
and I'm a no. That ends the public hearing.
So I will work over the next 2 weeks to finalize the decision. I will likely send out an email to the board asking you to assist me in wordsmithing some of your major reasons. And then we will vote to review and ratify the decision in 2 weeks, if that's amenable to the board.
Thank you, Evan.
Okay.
Henry, you're on.
Got to turn your mic on, Henry.
Yeah, Henry, you're muted.
There we go. You can hear me?
Yep.
All right, just a couple things. New business. How about having a work session to see if we can streamline some of this stuff in the future? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Or we want to let this rest for a couple of weeks.
I'm okay with either way, Henry.
I think it's probably been long enough and emotional enough for us. We don't have a lot coming, so let's take and put this off for a couple of weeks. And so 2 weeks, we have our next meeting. Then after that, we'll have a work session of some sort. And we can move on. I want to thank you, Mike Walsh. You did very well in a very difficult situation.
I had one item under new business, hoping that the board would designate a member to serve on the Route 3 Highway Interchange Advisory Board. This first public presentation from the consultant of the draft report is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 17th. Board of Selectmen has voted their designee, which is George Dixon. The Planning Board also has a position on this advisory board. And then the final one is the EDC. I'll be working with Donald offline In addition to those board representatives, the town manager, myself, and Lisa Maroney make up the remainder of the advisory board.
When will the meeting be? At what time?
7 p.m., February 17th, a week from today. And that's a one meeting. This is not a committee. This is not, it's a one meeting. There may be a second advisory board meeting, but that will be the extent of it.
Another reason not to have.
I'm willing.
You gonna go, Mike? You all set? to go,
Yeah,
Mike?
it's next Wednesday. I can go.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, you can send me the info,
Unless
Evan.
somebody else has an
And by the way,
overwhelming-
would somebody get on that?
Unless somebody else
Oh,
has
I
an
have a motion.
overwhelming want to do it, I would put Mike Raisback's name up for it.
I'm
Anything
good
else?
with Mike doing it.
Yeah, you're good, Mike.
I would only ask if Mike Walsh would want to do it because of the impacts on Route 40.
I'm already attending that meeting. Is this the meeting, Evan, that I'm attending as a precinct rep?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm already
Never
there, so
mind then.
I would defer it to somebody else. Thank you, though.
That's fine.
All right. So that being said and done. do I
Make a
have
motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Everybody, good meeting.
Yeah, long but good.